Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stones.
Am I going to get sued?
You got legal on this?
Let's send you out on the right note. PFF sucks. Have a great day, everybody.
Wow.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube Monday morning, 7 a.m., ready to go to review Divisional Round weekend, Sam.
Big games.
4 games, couple hours to break it all down. Let's do it, man.
Let's go.
We've had, it's always a fun weekend, Divisional Round. You get the 2 teams coming off a bye, and you usually get some good football. So, anything you want to talk about at the top before we get into it?
No, we got some very good football this weekend, I think.
All right, let's do it. Let's start Saturday afternoon. Baltimore Ravens 34, Houston Texans 10. Ravens move to the AFC Championship. As we had mentioned on the preview show, sometimes you forget how good teams are coming off their bye. And look, the 49ers had some ups and downs in their game, which we'll get to. But Baltimore looked pretty good and pulled away in the second half. It was 10-10. It was a big turning point in the game, which I'll get to. But Lamar Jackson finishes 16 of 22 for 152 and 2 passing touchdowns, but also 11 carries for 100 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. First quarterback in NFL history to have 2 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns, I believe. Is that what it was? There was some stat. You always get those stats. The first guy to ever do this, and this. But 2 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns for Lamar Jackson as the Ravens pull away in the second half.
Yeah, the second half certainly felt like exactly what you were talking about in the preview show, which is, sometimes you forget just how good that 1 seed is. They rock up and they're just better than the team that made it through the wild cards. And that was what the second half of this game was. It was close in the first half. The punt return touchdown maybe made it look closer than it actually was. But certainly in the second half, the Ravens were 24-0 or something in the second half. They scored. The Texans couldn't. And therefore, Baltimore just eased away consistently in the second half, and they were better on both sides of the ball.
The punt return you mentioned, Steven Sims, it was 10-3 Baltimore, and Houston was really struggling moving the ball offensively.
Yeah, they basically couldn't get anything going on offense all game.
Right.
They had the punt return touchdown, and they'd only just got the 3 points before that. They were struggling completely on that side of the ball throughout. Baltimore started slowly and then started scoring, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, Steven Sims with a 67-yard punt return to make it 10-10 before the half. And then Baltimore gets the ball back. They had a chance to maybe score just before halftime. Lamar Jackson gets sacked a couple times, didn't really have an opportunity to score. So again, Houston, it felt like they had the momentum, Sam. Houston had an opportunity to it was a big play to at least keep them in it. But as you said, Houston they were unable to do anything offensively. Early down runs to nowhere for the Texans. The Ravens' run defense was very good. Devin Singletary finishes with just nine carries for 22 yards, a bunch of them on first down. He had a 16-yarder in there, but other than that, they were really going for nothing, putting Houston against behind the sticks. John Harbaugh at halftime, I don't know if you listened to his interview, just seemed very confident. A lot of what Harbaugh said, I think both before the game, during the game, after the game, basically implying Lamar Jackson's locked in, this team's locked in, they feel really confident in just how good they are. There's like a real subtle confidence with this team. And John Harbaugh was basically implying like, hey, we think we're going to, maybe pull away here in the second half. He didn't say it like that, but he was implying it, and that's exactly what the Ravens did.
Yeah, I think certainly you would expect it. It was a close game in that first half, but Baltimore's defense looked so good, and they were really stymieing anything the Texans were trying to get going at all. The Texans weren't helping themselves either. They had more penalties before the end of the first quarter than they had in the entire game against the Browns. It's like, okay, it's already hard. You don't need to make it harder with false starts and, a bunch of other penalties in there as well. It's going to be a problem unless they figure out some way of getting offense going, because eventually Baltimore will. Like we've seen this season, they're too hard to stop for the entirety of the game because eventually Lamar Jackson's going to take over. And even in that first half, I mean, they were blitzing the hell out of him, the Texans. They blitzed him like 70% of the time or something in the first half. They had just held him before that punt return touchdown. It's like eventually, it's just too hard to keep that up for an entire game. Eventually, they're going to get some stuff going, and unless you're able to answer when they do, you're going to lose.
Arthur Millette, the nickel corner, he had 3 blitzes, all pressure. I mean, the Ravens, I think that is what makes the Ravens so good, both sides of the ball. They're just well-rounded, man. It was very fundamentally sound. They're going to stop the run on first down. Jadeveon Clowney had a big game. Justin Madubuike. So the defensive line has a big game. And then when you get into second and third and long, they can blitz, they can play coverage, they can disguise it, they can create a little bit of indecision in the secondary. And they did this without Marlon Humphrey on the defensive side of the ball. They did it without Mark Andrews on the offensive side of the ball. Andrews should be back for the AFC Championship. We'll see about Humphrey, right? I mean, there's a chance he could play next week.
Yeah.
But either way, again, Baltimore, really well-rounded effort from them. Madubuike, who I highlighted, 8 pressures for him on the defensive line for the Ravens, a guy that had so many sacks this year, a lot of hustle and cleanup sacks, but this was one of his better pure pass-rushing performances on the interior. Baltimore is just too much. Because Houston only scored 3 points offensively. The punt return was their only touchdown. So dominant outing from Baltimore. Run
game was huge. I mean, the Texans kept hammering away at it, hoping that sooner or later the weight of carries will break. Devin Singletary had a couple of nice runs in there, but they got 38 net rushing yards for the game. Baltimore had 229 net rushing yards for the game. They kept hammering away, and it worked the longer the game went on. The Texans defense, it looked like it got tired. I think they just ran out of steam. They did a really nice job early. They had some really nice plays. They did manage to just about get off the field, but then they were right back on the field again. And it's like eventually, again, you're going to run out of steam to keep that kind of offense under check, and they weren't able to do it. Just a complete contrast in one team could not run the ball, the other team could run the ball pretty much at will.
I want to talk more about the Ravens offense, but here, to me, the turning point in the game, it was 10-10, early third quarter, Ravens driving, coming out of the half, and they're in the red zone. Lamar Jackson drops back to throw in the end zone, and Jalen Petrie kind of pulls off his coverage to jump the pass, basically, and drops the interception in the end zone. I don't even think it was a bad read from Lamar all that much, as much as it really was just a great play by Petrie. They double posts. Petrie's covering the inside post. He's got his eyes on the quarterback. Lamar throws the outside post, not to Petrie's man. Again, he pulls off his man and makes a diving pass breakup, but he has his hands on it. He has a chance for an end zone interception. The types of plays, if you're going to pull the upset, like you need to be able to make that play. And that was on first down. And the very next play, Ravens go QB draw, Lamar Jackson up the middle, 15-yard touchdown. And that was it, man. Those 2 plays essentially, I think, sealed the deal for Baltimore, the types of plays Houston has to make if they're going to pull the upset.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember them more just because when you're talking about games like this, both games with the number 1 seeds, they were like double-digit spreads, essentially. I know the second one made it over 10 by the time the game rolled around. I don't know if this one did, but effectively you're talking about a 10-point underdog for either team going into that game. And it's like if you're going to make that happen, you do need to make those plays or at least not have massive mistakes along the way. And if you don't, those are probably plays that are going to come back to haunt you. And there's this one in the 49ers game we'll get to. There were mistakes in that one where they had opportunities to capitalize as well. It's like you just can't be sloppy in a game like this against a team as good as the number 1 seed in either case this year.
Just to touch on Lamar again and what he did, flipped the field a couple times with some long runs. Very efficient in the passing game, had the 2 touchdowns, found Isaiah Likely and Nelson Aguilar caught one for a touchdown. But the Ravens just, man, their offense, it was Justice Hill, it was Gus Edwards, Dalvin Cook even got in there a little bit.
Late in the game.
But putting those, moving their running backs around as they do, Lamar Jackson as part of the design running game, picking his spots as a scrambler, and then the players in the passing attack that they are throwing to. They can attack the seam with Isaiah Likely. I feel like they pull out the touchdown to Likely was that QB sweep throw. To me, that's every 5 or 6 games. If I'm the Ravens, I'm pulling out that play. It's a great play. The whole defense is going to commit to the QB sweep with Lamar Jackson. He pulls it down, throws it up for a touchdown to Likely. They just have so many ways to win. They can win with power. They can win horizontally with receivers winning yards after the catch, with their run game horizontally. The Ravens are just, man, it's just a well-rounded attack, and you saw all of that in this game.
And defense. I mean, their defense is incredible as well, all the way through the game. One point the Texans broke out remember the sort of double screen up the middle thing that the Seahawks ran a few weeks ago? Bobby seemed to reach a point in the game, Bobby Slowick, where he was like, nothing's working, let's pull out all the trick plays. He pulled out this screen thing where you sort of fake the screen left, fake the screen right, and then there's one right up the middle. And who was it the Seahawks did it against? And it was wide open, like everything was...
San Francisco.
Yeah, and it was completely open up the middle. So the 49ers, another good defense, and they dropped it completely, and the tight end just could run right up the middle for a touchdown. The Texans ran it, and not only was it Travis Jones got a hand on it to deflect it, but Kyle Hamilton was driving on it. I don't think he'd have made the play, but it wasn't going anywhere. He was going to hit and tackle the tight end right as he caught the ball. If not, break it up. If not, make a play on it. He ends up getting the almost interception out of it. But they had everything the Texans were doing absolutely locked down. That defense is so good. They were able to get pass rush with the stable of guys they have up front, guys like Kyle Hamilton on the back end. And as you said, even with injuries in that secondary, it didn't matter.
It was at the they did the throwback screen too. Was that the throw? That's a different one.
That was a different one.
It was interesting because you had Aikman and it was Aikman and Buck on the call, right? I think Aikman was basically saying, talking to Bobby before the game, they didn't think they could take traditional shot plays against the Ravens, so it was going to be trick plays, right? To create explosives against Baltimore, they went with trick plays because that one. I think they had one where they threw it back to Stroud and then set up a screen.
They barely got that off.
And they barely got that one, right? So when Bobby gets a head coaching job, he promised us he'd join the show.
He did.
And, that's one of those, I think, insight into game planning and where play calls come from during the week when you're preparing for the week. To look at this Ravens defense and say, we can't really take traditional shot plays. We're going to have to dial up 2, 3, 4 trick plays as the underdog, right? I wonder how much that.
Which ordinarily I would say I would applaud as a strategy. I would say trick plays generally are probably underused in the NFL. Yeah. I'm all for getting to a playoff game, pulling out 4 or 5 of them in a game. But everything they did, the Ravens just had absolutely locked down. That would be an interesting question to ask him when he comes on the show. What the hell do you do in a game like this where nothing's working? Nothing is going your way.
Yeah.
What's the call sheet with all the little subcategories? Where's the category for nothing is going right today? Here's a good play.
Find the good place.
Right.
If you look at the PFF grades too, both sides, we mentioned the Ravens defense, how well they played, taking everything away from Houston. Houston's grades aren't going to be all that good either because, again, Baltimore could run, efficient passing attack. It was just very smooth number 1 seed taking care of business.
The Ravens now, they haven't hosted a championship game since it was the Baltimore Colts playing. The Ravens have never hosted a championship game.
I know.
Isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah, they've played on the road in New England. Is it just twice in New England that they played? 2011 and 12? 12 they go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, they went on that run in 2012. You have the 2000 Ravens, et cetera, but they've never...
2000 Ravens were in Oakland against the Raiders.
Yeah, they've never hosted the championship game themselves.
That stadium was bumping.
Yeah.
The stadium was bumping in Baltimore.
The other interesting, the Texans took the ball. Apparently the first time this season they've done that.
The Texans?
Yeah.
So teams...
And then went 3 and out. It's we'll try to get momentum. We'll try and see... yeah.
We're seeing that a little bit more the last...
Well, I mean, the Packers, it's made some sense the last 2 weeks for them. It was interesting that this was the first time apparently all season the Texans had won the toss and taken the ball and tried to seize momentum, and then this was the flip side of how that can go wrong. They went 3 and out, and it's oh, crap, now we just gave away that for nothing.
I am always a huge proponent of deferring.
I would almost always defer. I just think there is a couple of very limited circumstances in which it makes sense to take the ball, and both of them happened for the Packers in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I mean, if I knew I was going to score a touchdown, maybe I'd take the ball.
Like either,
but if I knew I was going to score a touchdown, I'd rather have it in the second half too.
Sure. Well, yeah, except if it's against Dallas in the playoffs, you know?
Maybe.
Like I think there's a lot of value to like, oh, that team is psychologically weak.
Yeah.
Let's drop the hammer on them right out of the gate and see what happens. And then I think the similar story is true for the 49ers, not because of weakness, but because I think there is value in putting that team out of their game script situation. So Green Bay had both of the instances that I would take the ball come up in the last 2 weeks. I don't know that it applied for Houston this week.
All right, while we're talking about Baltimore, why don't we talk about a very special deal?
Yes.
We'll just get it in
In
there.
honor of the Ravens making it through to a conference championship and hosting a game for the first time since it was the Baltimore Colts.
Yeah.
I assume with Johnny Unitas, though, frankly, I'm not going to check.
Almost certainly.
Right.
So you know that the tailgate over at Jimmy's Seafood is going to be, off the chain? Is that how you would say it?
You should never say
Boomer.
that.
It's going to be exciting next week in Baltimore. Our friends over at Jimmy's Seafood, if you follow them on Twitter, huge Baltimore Ravens fans. And we were talking to our friends over at Jimmy's. You've been over there. They took great care of you.
That's right. Have you never been to Jimmy's?
I never got to go. Now, I've eaten their food.
You have eaten the food because
Right.
we got the box.
I've eaten their food the same way our listeners can now eat their food.
Well, this is the thing. So Jimmy's Seafood, they obviously have the restaurant there, which is freaking amazing. They have these giant tailgates. They're in the stadium, I think. They've got the food trucks. They've got all kinds of stuff, but they also ship the stuff out to people, i.e. us.
Yes.
And listeners.
So here's what you can do. Jimmy's Seafood, we have a special promo code for them, PFF NFL Pod. That's the promo, and you get free shipping for orders over $125.
Yes.
That is a special deal just for our listeners, because we talked to the guys over at Jimmy's. We said, we love your food. Send us some food, and we'll get our listeners a special deal, free shipping over $125. It's perfect for the Super Bowl. Again, they're diehard Ravens fans. They love PFF over there. And the crab cakes.
Crab cakes are amazing. So here's the thing, right? We gotta help the people out, give them some direction here, because they have, they have various, I think, standard care boxes or whatever that you can get. I would build your own, and I would go certainly what has to be in the box. The crab cakes are given. You got to have the crab cakes. They're good. Crab dip is also very good. The crab cake egg rolls are maybe the greatest substance, the greatest food item that has ever been created by anybody, ever. So you need the crab cake egg rolls in your box as part of your thing. Those things will change your life, and they may develop a problem where you have to get crab cake egg rolls shipped to you like every week. I can't be held responsible if that's what takes you down financially, but you need them in your life.
So go to so where are we going to do this? Jimmy'sFamousSeafood.com.
Yeah.
Get over there. Promo code PFF NFL Pod. Free shipping over $125. You have some crab cakes for me, right?
Yeah, they're in the freezer.
That's going to be a part of my dinner. It's going to be a part of my dinner today.
Along with the soup. Well, not today because they're in my freezer. So,
Okay. Well,
which means
maybe
they're not
this
here.
week I'm having it. I can't wait. So go check it out. Promo code's PFF NFL Pod. Free shipping over $125. Jimmy'sFamousSeafood.com.
I'd say tell them we sent you, but you don't need to.
You don't have to. The promo code tells you.
Tells them.
Perfect for the Super Bowl. Like I would order this if I wasn't in Vegas. Maybe I still will. I might order this in Vegas if I don't get into the Super Bowl again this year. Will I get a credential this year, Sam?
I don't know.
So far, not so good.
Right. Currently, you don't have one. But the man was very accommodating a year ago before he forgot we existed. So we'll see.
Well, Gordon's trying to.
I will say now,
this will be my third Super Bowl going, hoping to get into the game and not getting in.
I will say it's a newer stadium, so who knows what the setup will be. But based off last year's setup, where the auxiliary media, the peasant media, as I was, not the bigwigs, like I assume Peter King was somewhere fancy, but the low life media like me, Gordon is a much better body type to fit in the particular accommodation that was there. I genuinely don't think would have fit in the seating from last year.
Yeah.
Or if you did, you certainly would have been stuck there for the duration of the game without being able to leave your seat ever. Like you couldn't have gotten up, stretched your legs, walked to go get food. Nah, You're sit down, do not move. You can't get out for the next 3.5 hours.
And the media
4
food
hours.
was trash.
Yeah, it was a lunchbox, which you wouldn't have been able to get it. You would have been sitting in your seat, trapped, without being able to get access to the lunchbox. I would have had to go and get your lunchbox food for you that you wouldn't have wanted to
And
eat.
I ordered 50 wings in my
and
hotel room instead.
Then your lunchbox would have just been trapped in your small square of footage that took up all your entire desk. It would have been a nightmare.
If you're new to the show, it's probably worth just going back to our Super Bowl show to hear that discussion, how we had different experiences on Super Bowl Sunday. But we had fun. Look, this was the biggest blowout of the weekend. There's only so many ways we could say that the Ravens were really good. They overwhelmed the Texans. Look, Houston was hot too, right? They were hot. Both sides of the ball. C.J. Stroud stepping into stardom. We'll say, one of the best rookie seasons of all time. Stroud didn't play the best game. I don't think it was all on him. He didn't play the best game, but it wasn't horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, nothing was going right. So,
Yes.
yeah, Stroud didn't play amazing, but, I mean, it's not his fault. Like, nothing was working.
Couple more things to shout out here. It was brought to my attention that both C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love had near identical passer ratings this week.
Again?
For
Really?
the second straight week.
Why?
And I think this week, Stroud outgraded Jordan Love.
Ah, great.
So I expect a lot of blowback
Perfect.
in this one.
Were they, like, otherwise? No, they weren't. Like, Love was actually...
The construction of the stats.
Because what was
were very
ridiculous about last week is that the box score was almost identical.
Right.
It wasn't just the
touchdowns,
passer
the picks,
rating.
This
Everything.
week, Stroud had no touchdowns or interceptions. Love had, 2 and 2? Touchdowns and picks.
Right.
So the construction of the grade was very different. Yards per attempt were very similar, but a 72.2 passer rating for C.J. Stroud, 72.4 for Jordan Love. Almost identical week to week. Just had to point that out. One other weird thing. So, again, we mentioned Bobby Slowick a lot because he's an alumni of the PFF NFL podcast, was on the show.
Former colleague.
As an analyst. He had 3 interviews, I think, yesterday, the day after the game. They've got...
So he had 2 Zoom interviews before the game and then was like, right now I can do my actual interviews.
I mean, those are all on Zoom, too. They're 3 in the same day. He's not taking a private jet everywhere.
You don't know.
They're all remote if he's doing 3 in a day.
Maybe they're not. Maybe they're all on location. Maybe they'll come to him.
It's possible. It's possible. But this is I can't remember the exact rules. This is new, having playoff coaches be able to interview during the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so you've got Ben Johnson with Detroit doing this, Mike McDonald with the Ravens doing this. These guys are all doing interviews like 2 or 3 a day before the game.
And they're
at
not
times.
short. Like, these are long interviews.
Well, I mean, it's
Hours
not the Jeff Saturday
No, it's
10
not the
hours
but it is
on
like,
campus type of thing.
I forget. Somebody brought it up that these things can last like 4 to 6 hours.
And look, I think...
By the way, that's a corporate Zoom you're needing for that. Imagine 40 minutes set. Set up the call again.
Football's complicated and also simple all at the same time. Like, it's not like the Friday and Saturday before a game, people are like drawing up new plays or anything. The game plan's in. The game
But you got a
plan's been
week.
in.
If somebody's chewing up 12 hours of that,
It's the mental capacity, because I've heard people push back on this, right? Like, a lot of pushback on the idea that football coaches have this idea that I have to work all day, I got to sleep in my office. You talk about John Gruden's in the office by 3 a.m., like all these stories you hear from coaches. But it's like, man, when you're calling plays and you're in a game, how do you stay focused, right? You want that mental clarity. You probably need your AG1 for your mental clarity. We'll talk about that later.
I mean,
but
yeah.
how do you keep focus there when at the same time you've got this dream job potential? You have a chance to be an NFL head coach for the first time. And oh, by the way, you're getting interviewed about how are you gonna fix my team?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with my roster? What's your plan for my roster and who we might draft and what we might do in free agency? Like, those are all parts of the interviews. This is an unbelievable juggling act for coaches who have to go, oh, by the way, try to win a playoff game and win a Super Bowl with their team right now.
None of it is helpful to the team actually in the playoffs at the current moment. We talked about it a little bit with Brad on Friday's show. Brad basically says, just push it back. They don't need to be doing it during the playoff run. Like, this is silly. I mean,
2 weeks in between the Super Bowl feels like
that's the thing. So
for those guys.
you have a week, and in this case, right, So Bobby is fresh off playoff game 1 where they absolutely wrecked the Browns. Now you have a week to cope with another one of the best defenses in the NFL and figure out how you're going to stop them. And then, so I mean, that's a fairly finite amount of time anyway to construct a game plan completely centered around beating one really good defense. If you're doing 2 interviews in that time and they can last 4 to 6 hours, that's a day. One of your days, of which you don't have that many, is gone, right? Now you also have to prep for the idiot-specific things that team is going to be asking you. Bobby is like locked in on Ravens and nothing else and his team and blah, blah, blah. And now someone's going to ask him about like a draft prospect or an upcoming free agent or whatever, right? So like you can't just go, I have no earthly idea what you're talking about. He needs to prep that stuff, right? So that's also time taken specific to the interview that's not going on game planning against Lamar Jackson, or not Lamar Jackson, the Kyle Hamilton and the defense and blah, blah. It's not good. Like I don't see any way that helps anybody except the teams getting those interviews done. So, but I also have sympathy with the idea that if they don't get interviewed now, you are setting those teams back by having to wait. Like while everyone else is getting on with the offseason, that team is, just twiddling their thumbs until their preferred coaching candidate becomes available.
The other thing, I mean, it's not like Bobby or Mike McDonald or any of these guys. It's not like they're on an island and it's like, hey, go do some research and do your interview. They all have agents. The agent's job, because we do work with agencies, by the way. They do have our data to help with this process. They are prepping, right? They are prepping all of their candidates for their interviews and everything. It's not like they're on an island doing all this, but it's still...
No, but at some point the information needs to get into your head, and that takes some time.
Yes.
So I think time you're not spending on whatever you should be doing during that week.
Anyway, we could talk more about that another time, but I thought that was just another interesting wrinkle here. So look, I can't wait to see this Ravens team against the Chiefs. The Chiefs, who we'll talk about in a couple hours, Chiefs are firing on all cylinders, both sides of the ball. We know that their defense has been great all season, but now their offense is cooking. We're cooking yesterday against a depleted Bills defense. Now go up against the Ravens, who have just been so consistent. I think it's the consistency of the Ravens, Sam, from start to finish this season, and just over the course of a 60-minute game, even when it was 10-10, consistency, and by the end of the day, they're up 34-10, and they're running like crazy, and they can win in all phases. So, good job by Baltimore. Can't wait to see them hosting the AFC Championship next week. Good?
Mm-hmm. Remember, go get Jimmy's Seafood.
Go get Jimmy's Seafood. Jimmy's Famous Seafood. What's the promo? PFF NFL Pod.
Do we? I mean, I don't know. This wasn't a podcast thing, right? When we did the training camp tour back in the late 1970s, whenever that was, we ended up going to Jimmy's Seafood when we went through Baltimore, and they absolutely took care of us, hooked us up. They gave us a free bucket of crab that incinerated Jack Farrell's hands trying to open the crab.
Oh yeah, the blue crabs. Yeah.
They like demonstrated how to do this, right? They had the server, and she was like, you prise the thing open with its own leg, and you rip it apart. And she's doing this whole thing like quickly. Jack is trying to follow along, and is like, I don't understand how you're doing this. This is like the temperature of molten lava. How is this not incinerating your hands? So we had the whole crab, and they gave us like polos and stuff. Those guys were awesome.
Yeah, because you asked the people, where should we eat? Everybody said Jimmy's. Yeah. You went there, and they treated you like kings.
They did.
I wasn't on that leg of the tour. I missed it, but
that's a shame, because you would have wrecked some crab.
But they will deliver. They delivered. They told us they delivered to Alaska. They deliver all across the nation.
Who is out there in Alaska ordering crab from Maryland?
That's how good it is. Yeah. That's how good it is. All right, man. Saturday night, San Francisco 49ers 24, Green Bay Packers 21.
In the rain.
A lot of rain. Big rain game here for the Niners.
It said the weather forecast was for, what was it, like light rain. That wasn't light.
No, it was off and on, but then it got real heavy when the Packers were trying to make their comeback
right at the worst time, yeah, for Green Bay's point of view.
It was a back and forth game, man. Niners were up 14-13. Packers come back, go up 24-14 with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion heading into the fourth quarter. Niners come back with a field goal to get within 4, and then Brock Purdy does lead the game-winning drive. Christian McCaffrey 6-yard touchdown with 1:11 left put the Niners up for good. game ends with a Jordan Love, Brett Favreian type of throwback across his body for a game-ending interception. It was a really good game. There are some Brock Purdy takes out there that are just all over the place because people just can't. I don't know. We'll talk about it. But what are your instant takeaways coming out of this one?
Best game of the weekend?
Chiefs-Bills was...
But that had a crappy ending.
It did.
This didn't. The ending wasn't good from Green Bay's point of view, but it was a good ending to the game in addition to being an amazing game all the way through.
No, this was really good.
I don't think the football was necessarily amazing quality top to bottom, but from this game was incredible.
I just like the drama. Even if it's good defense or it's bad offense or it's great, whatever it is, it's the drama.
And it's not like it was
intensity of
terrible
every play.
football. It just wasn't, there have been better games from a fundamental football quality in the NFL, but this was a fantastic game that was tight, compelling. It was a battle all the way through it, had key plays, had key almost plays, that could have swung the game and didn't. It was just a fantastic game, I thought. Do
you have a list of the Packers' missed opportunities? I have a list of a few.
Yeah,
key plays.
one guy basically almost got. You could argue one player on defense cost them this game. I wouldn't make it that strong, but it's not a great performance from him. But go back to the start. So last week, Green Bay won the toss, took the ball, and scored immediately against Dallas and put them in a hole, started the whole thing, and was a huge part of it. And we were saying, look, I've said all season long, a team needs to do that to San Francisco because I think that's the way you can knock that team off its game. Green Bay tried it. They won the toss again. They took the ball again. Again, just like last week, they had this giant – last week I think it was a 12-play drive before they scored the touchdown. This week it was a 14-play drive. They had to settle for a field goal. The next drive, they end up getting or on that drive, rather, they get a pass interference from Ambry Thomas that was a huge sort of extension. That was on 3rd and 6. Charvarius Ward has a pass breakup in the end zone,
Great play,
which is a 4-point play. That was on 3rd down, was basically going to be in the guy's hands. That would have been your touchdown to open the game. Ward breaks it up, ends up having to settle for a field goal. So that's a 4-point defensive play by Charvarius Ward. Then on the 49ers' first drive, Darnell Savage drops a stone-cold interception right into his hands. That might have been a pick 6. That might have been the play. Right away, they had a chance to get the touchdown. Didn't get it because Ward breaks it up in the end zone, but it's still 3 points. Then they get an interception thrown right to Darnell Savage. Remember, he got one last week against Dallas. He got an amazing play, pick 6, huge part of that whole thing. Didn't get it. A bad read by Brock Purdy. They eventually get the stop, but that was a big play that could have broken their way. And then the next drive, Green Bay goes for it in 4th and 1 in the red zone, doesn't get it. So they were right on the cusp of that whole take the ball, score, put them in a hole, and they couldn't quite get it to the level where it would have, I think, really caused problems.
There's more to talk about on that 4th and 1, but first, is 2024 bringing exciting or unexpected changes to your life? Well, here's a secret weapon to help you face those challenges with more confidence. It's a great term life insurance policy. That's right. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to protect your family's financial future so you can focus on what's ahead, knowing your family is protected if something else unexpected happens. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. The 4th and 1 failure that you talked about, Packers, they do a hurry-up QB sneak on 4th and 1. They could have kicked a field goal to go up 6. We know in these games against as a 9+ point underdog, you probably don't want to just go up 6. You need to, you need touchdowns here. Jordan Love QB sneak on the hurry up looked like a bad spot.
Yeah, it really did.
Looked like a bad spot. There were two I think, two bad spots
That was
on Love QB sneaks. The first one, they couldn't challenge it because it was probably just too risky, right? It wasn't clear enough, but it was probably a bad spot.
Yeah, I don't know.
The second one was clear, and they overturned it.
Right.
Later.
I don't know that they would have won that challenge, but it did look like a bad spot. The other interesting thing about that was it was a long one. You know, a lot of times 4th and 1 can be anything from 4 inches to go, like where actually Jason Kelsey's got you the first down before you even snap the ball.
Yeah.
With this little, move the ball forward thing. Or it can be like 1.5 yards. This was more than a yard. It was a long one to go. Now, they still maybe got it and got screwed out of it by the tough spot of the ball. But still, I mean, that was sort of showing you how aggressive they were trying to be early in this game, taking the ball, trying to get it all, trying to make that thing. Because all the way through this game, they were flashing up those graphics of the things you say don't mean anything. Shanahan, what was he, 0-38, trailing by 8 or more going into the fourth quarter. They then modified that because they weren't going to get to 8. Turns out he was 0-30 before this game, trailing by 5 or more in the fourth quarter. That, again, is pretty crazy. It's the worst in the NFL, however difficult it is to win from those situations. And he ends up getting the win this time.
They did modify it. So he didn't get over the down 8 hump. Well,
We have to-
that
you have to
stat's
admit-
still alive for us.
Right. You have to admit that is a more – it's the lower that number gets, the more compelling it becomes.
All I'm saying is if you're going to create an entire narrative around the offense can't come back, they can't play from a deficit or whatever that narrative might be, you have to include any time they've been down 5. Because Jimmy Garoppolo, in his career, is very good at fourth quarter comebacks. He has been very good. He's about 50% of the time they've won, which is high. There's 4 quarterbacks above 50 in NFL history. So Jimmy Garoppolo has been very good in fourth quarter comeback situations. That includes any comeback. So I don't remember them all specifically. So of course that's if they're down 3 or they're down 2 and they kick a game-winning field goal. That all counts.
Right.
But I'm sure some of them, there was a point where maybe they didn't enter the fourth quarter down 5, but at some point they were down at least a touchdown in the fourth quarter and still made the comeback. So that, if you're going to create an entire storyline around it, then include all of the opportunities, I guess, is my point.
But that is quite a large – it's not like this isn't a sample size problem. Like 30 is a pretty large number of, games where this has happened. They've gotten 0
I get it.
before this.
I understand. All I'm saying is if you're going to come to the conclusion that the offense just doesn't function when they're down in the fourth quarter, there were other games where they made plenty of fourth quarter comebacks, even if it was just for a game-winning field goal. Like, they still were able to do it, right? Either way, they ended up doing it. Brock Purdy in this game was just all over the place early on. Accuracy was all over the place. Started out the game with a glove.
Yeah.
Took off the glove.
So remember, the last game that Purdy played in the rain was against Cleveland earlier in the year, where the ball slipped out of his hand completely one time, just like gone. And he had a couple of other plays in there that were ugly. And I attributed to the wet conditions, to the rain. And we had an emailer or a listener argue with that and say, well, that's not true. Like, he's also, had other plays. I forget what his argument was, but basically saying it wasn't the conditions. The conditions were at least in his head enough that he came into this game wearing a glove that he doesn't normally wear. So he's like, I need the grip. And then dumped the glove during the game. And there's that one video out there of him being so in his own head that he's like wiping his hand mid-drop back with the ball in his left hand.
I couldn't believe that.
Right. As a tick, to be like, uh-oh, and then throws a ball that wasn't close to being completed. So, look, the conditions I don't think helped either quarterback, and I think both quarterbacks actually had far from their best game. I think you have to start saying the wet weather absolutely impacted Brock Purdy twice this season.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And again, they both had to play in it, but Purdy ended up making some huge plays in the end.
And by the way, the wet weather, I think absolutely contributed to the crazy Favrean game-losing throw that Jordan Love attempted at the end.
Yeah, I mean, look.
If that's dry, that ball probably lands a fair distance away from where it landed in this game.
It was a poor decision, obviously. Let's circle back to Love. I just wanted to talk Purdy a little bit long. Well, here's one thing that stood out to me. The run games in the playoffs generally, the running games have been good. And we're always pretty vocal here at PFF that it's a passing league, it's a pass first league, and I think a lot of the old adages that you need to run the ball in January type of thing are a little overblown. But I think there's some truth to it this year. I don't think you need to #establish the run or anything like that, but you do need answers. And you rarely want to be one-dimensional as an offense. And I think the Packers ran the ball really well the last 2 weeks. That was a big part of their win against the Cowboys. They ran the ball really well in this game as well. But the Niners also ran the ball well. The Chiefs and the Bills ran the ball well. The Lions did. I mean, there's a lot of teams, and we talked about the Ravens with over 200 yards. The run games have been massive in the playoffs so far. But it wasn't – a lot of times at the end of the day, and the reason why the rushing stats are always – people are, if you win the rushing battle, you're going to win, and they, conflate those things. It's been the losing teams have run the ball extremely well too, but I think they've needed it. The Packers' offense down the stretch here with Aaron Jones since he came back from injury has been outstanding.
Aaron Jones has looked amazing.
He's been incredible. He had a 53-yard. I mean, there was a point where the Packers were completely backed up. He flips the field with a 53-yarder. The Packers, in between the 20s, did almost everything that they could. It was red zone. It was missed field goal. I mean, it was little things added up for the Packers, but the offense was moving the ball. Aaron Jones was a big part of it. And again, from a San Francisco standpoint, Christian McCaffrey, 39-yard touchdown, 2 total touchdowns. Really nice job by the Niners on the ground as well. Yeah,
McCaffrey was fantastic again. Some bad Green Bay tackling on McCaffrey's touchdowns. Both of them featured a neither one of them should have been scored because a guy had him lined up one-on-one and missed the tackle. So we said before, the first Green Bay drive on defense, Darnell Savage drops an interception. Darnell Savage also misses a one-on-one tackle with Christian McCaffrey not even in the hole, just at the second level. His first touchdown, the long one, Savage is coming downhill. He's got him lined up one-on-one, completely misses a tackle. McCaffrey then sidesteps another guy, and he's gone for the touchdown. So Darnell Savage in this game has a dropped interception on the first drive that could have been a pick six. He has a one-on-one missed tackle on Christian McCaffrey that ends up in a touchdown, and he gets beaten one-on-one by George Kittle on a play that becomes a touchdown.
You're just going to blame it all on Darnell Savage.
I'm just saying that if you're going to make 3 mistakes, it's almost impossible to create higher leverage mistakes than those 3. That's touchdown, and could have been defensive touchdown that you left on the board.
Oh, the what ifs are
If you're going to screw
rough.
up 3 times, I don't know that it's possible to screw up 3 times that would have made a bigger impact than those 3.
The what ifs are so rough when you come out of a playoff loss like that. The Packers in particular, they were spamming toss sweep over and over in this game. And I didn't tweet out the stats to everybody, but somebody had asked, or I tweeted out generally what we call same side puller. Any plays where there's a puller to the front side of the play, that's like a toss sweep. That's the old pin and pull on an outside zone play. That is the highest yards per carry play in the NFL over the last 4 years. I mean, I just checked 4 years, but historically that's the best play. It's one of those things where you don't just take that data and run it over and over again. But the Packers kind of were. The Niners didn't have answers for it. It's an interesting play when you look at the data because the yards before contact, as in like the scheme, isn't the best. But the running back breaks the most tackle. They create the most after contact. So essentially you're putting the running back out in space with blockers,
right?
And it puts them in position to break tackles and create more big plays, and the Packers were spamming that over and over again, having a lot of success against the Niners.
I didn't tweet this out when they sort of announced it pre-game, but I was thinking it. It's actually a good thing that the Packers are without A.J. Dillon in this game, because can you imagine if they'd given Dillon just 12, if they just split the workload 50-50? Those are plays that are objectively worse, not having Aaron Jones carry the ball by making that split workload. Instead, you get Aaron Jones carrying the load, and then you get a couple plays here or there with Emmanuel Wilson where it's like, okay, Aaron Jones needs a breather for a second. But AJ, whatever you think about Dillon, it wouldn't have helped, I don't think, them having him in there. Aaron Jones was fantastic, and leaning on him as the alpha running back in the backfield was a big thing for Green Bay.
A couple other key points in this game, because I want to talk about Purdy and Love, because I think Purdy and Love kind of just switched. Purdy was inconsistent, I think, throughout most of the game, but he made a lot of big throws in the second half. Love had that one spectacular throw where he scrambled and just throws a laser along the left sideline, which was unreal. But Love's accuracy started to disappear in the second half. But at the end of the first half, the Kyle Shanahan, game situation, clock control, they were playing for a field goal. They were very conservative before the half. Just the game management, again, maybe comes back to bite Kyle Shanahan and the Niners. They were playing conservative, playing for the field goal, missed the field goal, settled for a long field goal. That was just close to 50, I think. With this offense and those playmakers, probably should be a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah. Jordan Love was interesting because he was better in the first half and the second half, and maybe that was a weather thing. But he also wasn't as dialed in. He wasn't as perfect as he'd been the last sort of few weeks, where he'd looked like he'd hit this level and was just playing at this incredible. There were more misses in there, and it started to look a little bit more like earlier in the season, where it was flashes of brilliance and some really high-end stuff, but then you'd get a play here or there where you're just like, why was that so far off? The ball location was off. And again, I don't know how much of this was the weather. Maybe all of it was. But it certainly wasn't quite – it wasn't the Jordan Love from last week where you're like, oh, he's dialed in. Every pass he hits is going to be dead on, and that's a really difficult thing to stop. It's like he's missing a few. And even if it's just bad ball location, it's enough that it's giving opportunities to the San Francisco defense, and that may come back to bite them later on. And it did. The other play I think that we have to talk about is a massive swing. The Packers get this incredible kick return by Keyshawn Nixon, who then fumbles the ball in the tackle, and then Eric Wilson, trailing it from behind, dives on it and saves a turnover. Incredible play by him. Incredible play by Nixon right up until fumbling, which ended up being like, you need to credit him for the return because they ended up with great field position because Wilson saved it. But that was a wild play.
Elite fumble recovery.
And they got a touchdown on that drive, so it was a big play across the board.
All these plays are just so magnified, and I think the Bills-Chiefs game, it mattered a lot. In this game, though, Jordan Love's first interception. You've got the Packers are up 21-14. It's 3rd and 11. But when you're up 7 against the Niners, this was the chance. This is what you were saying. Like, the Packers had a chance to put them in this hole late third quarter to drive down. If they just kick a field goal, they're up 10. Pretty much heading into the fourth quarter, the thing that the Shanahan-led teams have never been able to come back from. Jordan Love misses the short throw underneath, gets tipped up, and it's intercepted by Drake Greenlaw, who had a huge game for the Niners.
And that was a perfect example of, it was just off. He wasn't missing those the last couple of weeks. And then he comes in and the ball it's not even close. It's like a yard behind the tight end. Tight end can only just get his fingers to it.
Missed him by a mile.
Which is why it ends up getting popped right up into the air into Greenlaw's hands.
Those are interesting plays because they're not necessarily turnover worthy. He didn't make a decision. He didn't throw a pass that really should have been intercepted. He just missed an open throw. And it just happened to get tipped up right to Greenlaw. That thing doesn't necessarily get picked off most of the time. But again, Packers were dropping interceptions. Niners have this one. Nice play by Drake Greenlaw, but that thing gets tipped up, almost to him, or at least where he's going. That flips the field for the Niners, gets them a field goal to get back within 4, and eventually sets up, gives them the opportunity for their game-winning touchdown drive. So that play was huge at the end of the third quarter because at the other part of this, ends up becoming probably 40 yards of field position. Even if they miss the third down, they're probably going to punt, put the Niners back. Instead, the Niners get the ball at midfield. But yeah, that was to me that was the story of Love's second half. I think more of his misses were in the second half. He was off, and then of course he has the crossbody miss,
right?
Crossbody interception to end the game.
Second half was worse, and I think the rain was worse in the second half. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know how much of this was purely conditions, wet football, all that kind of stuff. Maybe all of it was. But the reality is Jordan Love was worse than he's been the last few weeks. And in particular, that manifests itself with accuracy. Plays like that, where he misses Tucker Kraft over the middle by like 2 yards almost. I mean, Kraft is a giant human being who can only just contort himself backwards and get one hand to this pass that is supposed to be like at face level as he runs across the middle of the field, wide open, by the way.
There was a point, like up until that point, didn't it just feel like the rain was affecting the Niners way more? They were slipping all over the place. Yeah. The broadcast was they were making a big deal of you've got like 6 pairs of cleats and screw-ins to choose from, and it's amazing to me. By the way, there are people dedicated on the team to study the play, and they're at home, but study the playing surface, to know the right cleats, to know all these things and prepare the players. I mean, the Niners looked unprepared.
It also blows my mind that is left up to players to an extent. Like,
I think you're giving them the information and they have to, play around with it and see what feels good. But the Niners were slipping all over the place.
It feels like there's certain conditions where you just say, okay, you may have a choice, but your choice is between these 2 things, not this over here. Like, this is not an option today. Don't even think about it. And yet instead it's like, well, the surface is slippy. The rain is what it is. Make your choice, however bad it is. And it's only later in the game, like, for the love of God, take off these ones and put on the giant cleats that are actually going to give you some chance of gripping.
That was remember how bad the Super Bowl was last year with the Eagles and Chiefs?
I mean,
we're slipping all over the place.
It's basically any game on grass in weather.
Players want grass, but it leads to some ugly products sometimes, just saying. Let's talk Brock Purdy a little bit. Again, I think the rain story was related to Purdy more, and you're rightfully saying, look, it affects both teams. It affects both quarterbacks. It affected Jordan Love. But Purdy was more visibly shaken, it seemed, by the rain. I mean, he was just all over the place. Not just it wasn't bad decisions necessarily, the Savage one maybe, but just missing a lot of open throws in this one. But in crunch time, man, fourth quarter, he throws just a ridiculous Nick Mullins-esque up and away from coverage to Juwan Jennings in the middle of the field. Great throw there. By the way, I mean, there's just so much to talk about here. Deebo Samuel getting hurt, too. We have to discuss. Shoulder injury early on.
Which may impact next week.
And Deebo has been we know the on-off splits with Deebo, but it's true for a lot of these players. And it's not always, predictive or whatever. But we know that Deebo Samuel makes this thing tick, right?
Yeah.
To a point. I mean, he creates mismatches. He's outstanding.
I mean, he was missing previously, and that's when their 3-game losing skid happened.
Right. So him missing time. So you got Juwan Jennings. You have Chris Conley getting reps. Former Chiefs legend, big speedy receiver who had a 17-yard. It was a great route, 17-yard timing deep out by Brock Purdy. But yeah, Purdy started making some of those throws down the stretch. Leads the game-winning drive. I think he was 5 for 6. The one was a drop by George Kittle, which could have been a big drop. And the Niners just bounced back from it, and Purdy leads the game-winning drive. So overall, I don't think Brock Purdy played a very good game. The grade won't be great. Something, too, being able to do that in crunch time and stepping up when he was needed, though.
It is interesting how thin this 49ers group of playmakers is, even though it's amazing. So, you list off the players you have to try and match up with to stop this offense, and it's McCaffrey, it's Kittle, it's Ayuk, it's Deebo Samuel, Kyle Juszczyk. But an injury to any one of them changes everything, which is fascinating because as soon as one guy goes down, Deebo's done. Now you've got Juwan Jennings getting 31 snaps, receiving snaps. Now, Jennings had a great game, but I think that's a massive drop-off generally. And
Juwan Jennings is really good, though.
It leads to Ray McLeod and Chris Conley each getting 16 passing or receiving reps in this game. Like, that's a huge, it's every time one of those guys getting a target. And as you said, the Conley catch, the Conley target catch first down, great play. But you're like, how are we that close from getting Chris Conley being an integral part of this passing offense?
I mean, Juwan Jennings is a good next option for the Niners. But it's kind of like with Miami. if Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle go down, and it's like, hey, we got River Craycraft coming out there and making plays here. Yeah, Chris Conley and Ray McLeod.
So the other thing late in the game, one of the things that had happened over the last few weeks is right up at the point where everyone had gone, Joe Barry's defense is garbage, it's time to fire Joe Barry. The defense played amazing from that point on. One of the biggest criticisms of his defense this season has been not necessarily that it's just been bad across the board, but it's at the most critical moments, it gets way too soft. And they back up and they get passive and they just let the offense move the ball. Like at the crunch time, that's when the defense just gets weak, gets soft. And they did it again. The close game, it's tight. Everything's where it is. What's the actual score at this point? Green Bay is 21-17 up, and San Francisco gets the ball in the fourth quarter with 6 minutes left, and the defense just got so passive at that point. They didn't come after them. They backed off. They just let them have that drive, and it was painstaking. They got three third downs in that drive, scored on the final one. And eventually, the 49ers took almost all the time off the clock, got the touchdown to Christian McCaffrey, and now you've got a minute left with Jordan Love to try and answer in the rain. It's like, if you had just gotten aggressive against an offense that wasn't all right, that Purdy was in his own head with the rain, like if you just stuck to your guns and really came after him on that drive, even if they score, like what's the worst that could happen, right? There's 6 minutes left. I would rather you get too aggressive, they score, and now you've got 5 minutes or 4 minutes to answer instead of we're going to be passive. We're going to let them take the entire time off the clock, and now we can't answer because there's only a minute left.
They went, I'm looking at the coverage breakdown, cover 4, so quarters, which is off coverage, like you're saying, a little softer. Quarters, cover 6 or cover 3 on every one of those dropbacks, except there was the 3rd and 5, and this was a huge conversion here. 3rd and 5, slant to Brandon Ayuk. That was the one snap of man coverage that they played on that drive.
Right.
But Purdy stuck it in there, down and away from coverage. Ayuk did a great job making the play against Nixon. But yeah, you're right. It was maybe too easy. But look, coming out of this game, you have the guy from The Athletic writing that I just don't understand. I get the points he was trying to make, except is it David Lombardi? Maybe?
It's, yeah.
From The Athletic.
Right.
It was basically like, this is a tough night for Brock Purdy doubters.
Isn't that guy supposed to be some kind of troll? I mean, not like a
professional
one.
I think I saw him do the same thing, like week 3, that Giants game where the first 2 passes for Purdy were thrown right to the defense.
There's one 49ers guy that everybody says.
No, it's a different guy that does the troll stuff.
No, but not for fun, but like
there's someone else.
He's just that bad.
There's someone else. I think Lombardi is just like a strong Purdy believer.
Okay.
So he's looking for any way to be like, well, Purdy must be Montana.
Sure.
I mean, it's okay. And look, I think there's something to, you don't have your best stuff and the game's on the line and you go and get the job done. I think there is something to that. I think if you're trying to predict Brock Purdy's future, the ability for him in a bad game, in bad conditions, to step up when needed and play better in the fourth quarter than he did the rest of the game, which, by the way, was the opposite of how Purdy had been operating for a lot of his career. I think there's something to that. But for the conclusion to be like, man, Brock Purdy doubters, rough night for you, it's like, no, it was Mina, I thought, summed it up perfectly. She was like, this is a perfect night for everybody. If you're a Brock Purdy doubter, you're like, dude, can't even throw in the rain. Dude's terrible. If you're a Brock Purdy believer, you're like, man, ice water in his veins. Look at that. Comes out at the end. I mean, that's the truth. That was the reality of this game. It was not Brock Purdy's best game, but made some big plays down the stretch. And we'll still wait until we declare him Joe Montana. But I do think there's something to that. And I think the point, if the Lombardi guy was not so declarative in his statement that it's like, oh, you haters, rough night for the haters. And he just said there are some similarities, because he was trying to say there's some similarities when Joe Montana had the catch and he made all these plays. It wasn't always the best game, right? And that was what made Montana and a Brady, like that's what made those guys special. It didn't matter. Like, you may have caught them on their worst day, but if the game's close at the end, those guys are going to lead a comeback. Like, there's something to that. I agree. But you can't look at this entire body of work and be like, yeah, Brock Purdy, great game.
No. Yeah, Dan in the chat says Grant Cohn is the guy I was thinking of.
Grant Cohn, yeah, that's who you're thinking of.
Yeah. No, like when we did that Montana versus Young sort of podcast thing, one of the things that jumped out the most from going back watching all these crazy old games in the 80s and diving into Joe Montana lore and history and all that kind of stuff was just how many games where his signature comeback, his signature drive to end, like to build up his legacy began, after Joe had already thrown 2 interceptions and we were down, 21 points. That was like the setup, you know what I mean? And then Joe goes to work and we make the play and he executes the comeback. And that's what made, Ronnie Lott would die for that guy and all these kinds of things. It's like, but we forget about the first part. Like, he had the Andrew Luck thing. Like, he gets credit for putting out the fire that he started in the first place. Like, Montana did a lot of that as well. We just don't remember it because it happened in the late 1980s where there was barely the television coverage and that kind of thing. Now it's everywhere, so it's easier to be obvious. Also, people like PFF exist quantifying every one of these plays, and now, the nerds with their data, there's play-by-play and everything in a way there wasn't back in the 80s where you just had, he won. Now it's like, well, yeah, but look at the EPA and look at it shows you everything.
Look, like I said, there's something to it. And as always, I'm just like dead smack in the middle of the analysis. Wasn't Brock Purdy's best game, and I thought it was an impressive final drive.
Before we need to get into the weeds a bit, you'll love this because it's special teams. So there was Irish representation in this game. Daniel Whelan, who was the first Irishman to play in the NFL since the 80s or something, right? Now, spare a thought for the people in Ireland staying up to watch this game, to watch Daniel Whelan punt his way to glory. He didn't attempt to kick until like the fourth quarter, and I think he already had 1 punt in the game. But early in the game, there was a bad long snap, and Daniel Whelan does a great job to pick it up off the floor and then get it set, kick. Great job, right? Late in the game, Anders Carlson misses a kick that was pretty big in the outcome. If you look at the hold in that kick, it didn't look good. It was the ball's like tilted all the way forward. It's not like, the perfect ball up, spin it forward.
I've noticed the ball being tilted forward more.
Yeah, but this looked like this did not look like a design tilted forward thing. This looked like not a great hold. So
the missed kick had an opportunity to put the Packers up 7 instead of 4, which would have been
so we've gone. Whelan had one early in the game where he maybe saved the kick by rescuing the bad punt or the bad snap. He also had this one where it looked like he may have also. The kicker gets all the blame when the kick is bad, right? Unless the holder makes a complete and obvious balls of the hold. It's like, that one was on the holder. But if it's just the balls in front of the kicker, nobody really pays attention to how the hold is. It's just the kicker shanked another one. Time to get rid of that guy. And by the way, the Matt LaFleur comment on Anders Carlson was insane.
It was.
They just casually dropped during the broadcast that, we asked Matt LaFleur about his kicker, and he said, you know what? Every time he goes out to kick, I just pray. Excuse me? You tell me that your reaction when your kicker goes out to attempt points is, I just close my eyes and pray that he makes it. And you said that out loud to people.
Now, I don't know what the baseline is there for Matt LaFleur. Maybe he's just that's how he handles all kickers.
That's
with
even
prayer.
But even if it's not the fact. I would imagine a lot of coaches treat their kickers that way. Like just let's come on. But to say that out loud to journalists, knowing that that's probably going to get repeated on a national broadcast, is
at a position
wild.
Where the mentality is so fragile,
right,
for kickers.
That is crazy. That's one of the most insane things I can remember a head coach ever saying out loud in front of journalists.
Matt LaFleur. Anyway, let's put a bow on the Packers season since it's 8:00. Good season, man. The future.
Yeah.
The future's bright.
So much. I mean, much further ahead than they were expected to be. For them to be in the playoffs, for them to take it to the 49ers. And honestly, I think you can make a pretty strong argument they were the better team in this game and should have won it, and their mistakes cost them the game more than the 49ers like rescuing the game from them. I think they could and maybe should have won this game and didn't. For that to be the reality of this team with a first-time starter in Jordan Love and a group of wide receivers that are all first and second-year guys is crazy.
And it was different receivers stepping up every single week. Romeo Doubs was great these last couple weeks in the playoffs, whether it's Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones running the ball, still looking good. The Jordan Love's development this year should have Packers fans obviously really excited, even though this wasn't his best game, not the way you would want to finish it. But they were a 7 seed, probably the best 7 seed that we've seen because of how hot they were going into the playoffs. So Packers have a lot to be excited about. I think the NFC North is about to get wild because we know that the Lions are going to the NFC Championship. We'll talk about them in a minute here. The Bears are probably about to draft Caleb Williams, and the Vikings are always very, very competitive, and I think they've done a nice job in Minnesota as well, putting that roster together and building for the future there. So it's going to be competitive. NFC North, Packers fans should be pretty excited about the future and what they were able to accomplish this season.
Mm-hmm. Just a moment on that last, the Favrean play. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was 1st and 10, aside from anything else. There's like a minute left on the clock. It's 1st and 10. He gets forced out of the pocket, kind of. I made
a statement earlier on the podcast that if I read the comments, somebody's like, Steve, you're an idiot. Why would you say this? I said, throwing a game-ending interception isn't the worst thing in the world. And I meant it through the lens of, if you need a touchdown to win, and what the end of the game, it doesn't matter if the game ends on 4th down on an incompletion or if it ends on an interception. Either way, your chances of winning are slim, and you might have to take some chances. It was actually about Jordan Love, and maybe it was the Pittsburgh game. The game ended on an interception when they just had to force a throw or whatever. This is different, where they needed a field goal to tie so you could play both sides, right? That actually puts the defense in a bind, right? You don't want to give up the game-ending touchdown, but you also, you don't want them to get into field goal range either. You don't want to go to overtime. The offense can kind of dictate their terms there, take the underneath stuff if they need to, take shots when they have opportunities. This was a very poor decision. This was a bad way to end the football game.
Yeah, in his defense. So actually Hargrave is, from his perspective, Hargrave is forcing him well out of the pocket. He's got to run. So at the point he runs, there isn't much on. You look at the receivers on the play when he's forced out of the pocket to his right, they're all running deep. They're all covered. And there's basically nothing on. The one he attempts, if you're going to try a pass at that point, the one he attempts is the only one you could even think about. The thing is, though, it's 1st and 10, the play's dead, get rid of it. You're forced out of the pocket. If you just throw that away, it's 2nd and 10, and you're do over. Why? The pass he attempted was never on, and certainly not from the dynamics he was attempting it from. Just a horrible, horrible decision. Again, it was so similar to that Brett Favre 2009 Vikings NFC Championship game that a lot of people drew up side by side. The Favre one, it wasn't as far, but it was the same thing in terms of you don't need to make that pass at that point. Favre's running to the right field. He's got open real estate in front of him. He can pick up most of the 1st down by just hobbling his way to the sideline. Don't attempt the pass. This was similar. You got out of the pocket. You're not going to take a sack. You have enough time before Nick Bosa closes you down. Just throw it out. Throw it away.
I think that's one of the next steps in Jordan Love's development, right? We're so impressed because some of the throws he made this year were just out of this world. And when he was on, the confidence that he played with, and this is a confident throw, ill-advised confidence on this throw here, but the confidence that he played with and then executed with was so impressive the second half of the season, Jordan Love. But now it's going to be, I think, about situational football and knowing when to rely on special arm, special throws, live to play another day. That is another down. That is, I think, the next step for Jordan Love here is a little more situational football, situational awareness. Even early in the season when I think, was it a game-ending interception against the Raiders as well? It just felt like the shot plays were coming at the wrong times for Jordan Love at various points in the season. This is an example of that. So I think that's going to be a big part of the learning experience. Incredibly impressed with what Love did this year and the tools and the actual execution of some of the throws that he made. Now it's going to be about making them at the right time, I think, going forward. We got no more use for this game?
No.
All right, got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. We hit this weekend. The Prize Picks lineup from Thursday.
The first, no questions asked, no flex play involved, just clean sweep victory.
So we went more, half touchdown for Christian McCaffrey rushing and receiving. That was good. Dalton Kincaid, more than 39.5 receiving yards. Josh Allen, more than 43.5 rushing yards. A huge number, but he did it because Josh Allen runs like a maniac. So we did it. Our Prize Picks lineup had a really good weekend here. And you can do the same thing. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more, you pick less. It's that easy. Instead of battling thousands of players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than a 2 to 6 player stat projection and watch the winnings roll in. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so the entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for football and basketball games, if a player who exits the game in the first half doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So you saw us this weekend. We set our lineup, we picked more or less, and we won. That's how easy it is. So you guys can all do the same thing. You go to prizepicks.com/PFFNFL, use the code PFFNFL. You get a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL. Get your first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. On to Sunday's games. Detroit Lions 31, Tampa Bay Bucks 23. The Lions move to the NFC Championship. Detroit Lions are one game away from the Super Bowl here, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
This was another good game, back and forth. Anytime you have, these were touchdown plus underdogs pretty much. Bucks were 6.5-point underdogs. So from Houston standpoint, Green Bay standpoint, Tampa Bay, they're all underdogs on the road. You need things to go well for you. You need breaks or whatever it might be. And the Bucks kept hanging tough. They were in this. It got to 17-17 at the half. Lions started pulling away, but the Bucks got within a score. Eventually, Baker Mayfield also throws a game-ending interception like Jordan Love, and the Lions seal the deal to go to the NFC Championship.
Yeah, Lions, I think, played well enough to get it done. Yeah, the Bucks were able to hang tough despite consistently making the kind of mistakes that just made it difficult to do that, and eventually one too many mistakes cost them the game. But Mike Evans drops the pass early on, becomes an interception. Goff throws to Jamel Dean in the end zone. What should have been a turnover, should have been an interception, drops that interception. You get the Baker turnover late in the game that costs them. Like, they just made too many mistakes to eventually be able to overcome and get the win. And you can't do that if you're a touchdown underdog or whatever. You need to make fewer mistakes than the opposition, more than likely, if you're going to win the game. And Green Bay didn't. Tampa Bay didn't. And each one of these teams just couldn't get out of their own way enough to make it happen.
Yeah, I thought so. Jared Goff early on, I thought he played a pretty good game other than that one. I don't even think it was a bad decision in the end zone. He just missed the throw. He kind of lofted it up and just missed it short, and Dean drops the interception. That was a huge play in the game. Ended up just being a field goal opportunity for the Lions, so that cost the Bucks 3 points there. I thought on the other side, one of the biggest plays of the game was the Lions. I mean, momentum is such an overused term. I think momentum is really just, good football plays, and you want to have more good ones than bad ones. Amon-Ra St. Brown drops an open 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 over the middle of the field because the Lions, every time the Bucks would push back, the Lions generally came back and did a nice job, except for this middle of the game. St. Brown drops the ball over the middle, and it really kept the Bucks in the game. That was the Lions' offense had a lot of success, but that was a huge play, and that was a big part of the Bucks' comeback there. Mike Evans made up for the early drops. Baker flips the field with 2 downfield passes to Evans. One of them was outstanding, and I thought the broadcast did a nice job of saying as soon as they're getting single coverage, as soon as they rolled a single high, you got to use the fist, right? Yeah. Rolled a single high. As soon as the Lions rolled a single high, Baker and Evans, boom, they're like, we're taking the shot. And Baker just lofted it up there. Evans is so good at tracking the ball, makes the sliding catch. That set up their score just before the half. The Bucs needed those shot plays. They weren't taking them the entire game, but they needed a few of those to get on the board.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions were the better team basically throughout the game, but the Bucs were able to execute sort of 1.5 comebacks. You know, the first comeback was they only needed the one touchdown drive to get back into it in the first half, where it was just before halftime. Baker was fantastic on that drive. I mean, he had a big rush to make a play. He then had that quick pass against that kind of cover 2 look, and then the one you're talking about where they rotated the safeties and they just took the instant shot that got them to the 2-yard line, and then a really nice pass with some touch in the end zone on that kind of pick play that they got away with. They judged to be legal, however you want to describe that. And now you're 10-10 at the half. So, you know, the Lions have been the better team, I think, in the first half, and then one drive by Baker and the Bucs, and they're able to go in tied up. Then it gets away from them in the second half, and they almost attempt to come back again. They get a shot at it, and then Baker throws the game loser.
A couple key plays in this. So the mistakes that the Bucs made, some of the mistakes that they made were just in pass protection breakdowns.
They could never see like defensive bank blitz coming ever,
right,
in the entire game. And
so, you know, just so we're clear, unblocked defenders are often by design, right? And so and you say the quarterback's hot off of that guy. So if he blitzes, you have an answer generally behind him. You'll have somebody running a shorter route so you can get the ball out of your hands.
6 times in this game, there was unblocked pressure on Baker Mayfield. Jared Goff, facing the crazy blitz-happy Tampa Bay defense, had unblocked pressure once.
Yeah. And so those are tough. Like, I want to explain, like, the Rachaad White touchdown I thought was all Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. So I don't know if this was scheme, if it was at the line of scrimmage, if Baker Mayfield was not setting protection properly. Sometimes it's the offensive line and their adjustment. There was definitely one. Aiden Hutchinson had the unblocked sack where it looked like Luke Gedeke just blew either the snap count or it looked like he was supposed to be blocked. But listen, sometimes your protection will leave the best rusher unblocked, and that's okay oftentimes because you probably have a quick answer to get rid of the ball, and it doesn't really matter that an Aiden Hutchinson is left unblocked. This particular one, Hutchinson got the sack, but these plays were knocking the Bucs out of field goal range. Like, they were key plays oftentimes. So the protection was getting broken down pretty badly by the Lions defense.
And it's only okay when the quarterback knows it's coming.
Right, of course.
Generally speaking, yeah, sometimes you leave a rusher open by design, but the quarterback knows who it is and understands it's coming and knows to get rid of the ball quickly. These ones, they were leaving unblocked rushers, and the quarterback never seemed to see it until he arrived in his lap, at which point it's too late to do anything about it. That was the confusing part about it.
So that was a big part, and I thought that all set up So the reason why the Bucs were in the game late in the third quarter, by the way, a 2-play sequence here that was massive. On was it whatever the previous down was, second down I think. Baker rolls out and he throws the ball away, and his shin was down as he throws it away. Mm-hmm. The refs call it incomplete. It was very close. I think when you freeze frame the replay, he absolutely was down. Probably would have lost 5-6 yards, whatever it was. It would have made it about third and 15, 16, 17. And the Lions did not challenge the play. I don't know what your thoughts are. I kind of don't blame them for not challenging there, because timeouts in the second half are so important. Challenges are so important. And you're kind of at the mercy of the officials getting this right in overturning a play. I think it was pretty clear that Baker was down.
And also how quickly you get the replays of it. Like,
right.
It seemed like that one didn't get a clear replay of it for a while, at which point they kind of would have been throwing the flag blind, assuming that it was right or not. Like, there was a play in the Ravens game where clearly somebody told John Harbaugh to throw the challenge flag, and then as soon as the first replay came out, it's like it wasn't even close. And Harbaugh was pissed off. You're like, somebody told him to throw that flag.
It wasn't even close at all.
Based off clearly some weird angle that they saw. They're like, oh, it's definitely a fumble. Throw it. And then he, like, the first thing he sees of it, he's like, what are you doing? That's not even close to being a fumble.
So, yeah, that and so then the very next play, in a game where it was a fun battle, man, between Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, Bucs offensive coordinator Dave Canales. Again, both coordinators are candidates for head coaching jobs. They've had interviews. And the Lions pressure packages had been killing the Bucs. And for like the third or fourth time this season, Dave Canales calls a screen at the perfect time. How many screen passes have the Bucs had to Rachaad White where he's just got green in front of him? And that was this. That was a 17-yard touchdown, was it? 12-yard touchdown at the end of the third quarter to tie the game at 17. Just a beautiful play call because, again, the screen, you're inviting the pressure, dumping the ball off, blockers in front, Rachaad White walks in for a 12-yard touchdown to tie the game. It was a great call. And it does feel like, look, the Lions are a really good team. The secondary, when they did man up, when they are in single coverage, Cameron Sutton, I think, is a very good corner, but more in the zone-heavy type of scheme. I like Cam Sutton because he's pretty good outside. He's pretty good in the slot. He has that versatility. He just can't match up with some of the better receivers one-on-one. The Lions feel limited on the back end, and you saw that at times in this game. But this was a great call by Canales to get the Bucs right back in it and tie the game late third quarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Canales has been fantastic this season.
And then Jahmyr Gibbs in the fourth quarter, 31-yard touchdown, justifying the pick. I mean, look, the Lions draft class has been fantastic. Sam Laporta, he had 9 catches for 65 yards. Brian Branch.
Despite clearly not being 100%
Yeah,
yet.
still playing hurt. Brian Branch playing great football as a slot safety hybrid. And Jahmyr Gibbs has been an incredible playmaker for this offense.
Yeah, he has. I mean, this is a great offense generally across the board. Gibbs is a perfect fit for it right now. He's the perfect fit for today's NFL, which is skewing towards, fast, explosive running backs that can turn any crease into a bigger play. I think, if you're going to have a nuanced conversation about the 12th overall pick, you can separate the player from the value, which is the whole purpose all the way along. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs can be an incredible player and also not be the pick at 12.
Yeah.
The right pick at 12.
I mean, not to get too far into it, I think you can. So the running back first round thing is probably overrated because if you do make that pick, it's not like, okay, well the rosters, everything about the roster is going to be bad now, right? It's not like that extreme. The other part of it is they had 4 picks in the top 45 or 50 or whatever it was, 55 picks. That's another element to that. It's not your only, like with the Steelers picking Najee Harris, and it was like, Najee, go fix the run game. We don't have great offensive linemen. We don't have a bunch of other stuff, but go fix the run game. Jahmyr Gibbs gets added to this team, and I think they've done it the right way, as I said, all season. They don't just give him 25 carries to justify it. They use him in the right role to create explosive plays, which he's doing, as a complement to other guys that are getting explosive plays. So I think all of that adds up. The other part of it is the running back in the first round thing, it doesn't always necessarily come back to bite in year 1. It's year 3 or 4 when he's getting paid more, and it hinders other team-building decisions.
But it's simply a value proposition as well. Like, so Jahmyr Gibbs is fantastic. He's been great in this offense. On the other hand, has there been a discernible difference between Jahmyr Gibbs and the Devon Achane, who was in the third round, and Keaton Mitchell, who was undrafted? Those are essentially the three players, without getting too simplistic and too reductive about it. Those are effectively the same guy 3 times over. One of them was the 12th overall pick. One of them was a third rounder, and one of them was undrafted, right? So the point being, with running backs, one of the reasons you don't draft them at the top of the draft is because you can find those guys later on, particularly if you are looking for a very specific skill set. Meanwhile, there are other positions where that is not true, right? Kalijah Kancey, for example, who was a big impact player in this game, you don't find like impact 3-tech pass rushing interior players all the way throughout the draft. Like, who was the 3rd and the 7th round equivalent of Kalijah Kancey? Now, the 3rd round, you got Kobe Turner. The 7th round, the undrafted, I don't think there is one this year. So one of the players they could have had instead of Jahmyr Gibbs is a Kalijah Kancey, for example. I'm just saying we can separate, is Jahmyr Gibbs great? Yes. from was it the right pick at 12 more debatable.
Yeah, that's all. And I think when he becomes one of the top 5 or 6 highest paid running backs on his rookie contract, I think if it's going to come back to bite, it would be then. Lions fans don't care right now. I mean, he's awesome. He's fun to watch.
And that's the thing. It's why
he's a big part of this team right now.
Yes.
With a good offensive line, with playmakers on the outside, in the slot, at tight end, and then he gets to be the other playmaker to keep the defense off balance. It's a good fit for what the Lions are doing right now.
Right, and it's why it's just a waste of time for everyone to be like, you guys said it wasn't a good pick. It's pointless. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a good pick or not. They did it. He's an amazing player for them right now, and there is no like alternative world where you get to compare the two. So what's the point?
And this is the way to use him, man. 74 yards on 9 carries, including that 31-yarder, which became the game winner officially. Plus 4 catches for 40 yards out of the backfield. Adds a dynamic element to this offense. So the Lions started to pull away. They get up 31-17.
Looked done.
It looked like the game was over. But again, Baker Mayfield and the Bucs came back. Baker with a big-time throw to Mike Evans for a 16-yard touchdown. And then, of course, they're down 8. And go for 2, Sam. Mm-hmm. I thought Chris did a good job of quickly explaining that. You don't have a lot of time on the broadcast.
That was the cleanest explanation of that I've heard any announcer make, I think.
He had a little extra time, too, because they came out of the break, and he said, let me just reiterate, here's why. It involves 2-point conversions being a better than 50-50 proposition across the league, and also extra points being less than 100% proposition across the league because they've been pushed back. And then they did run a fade to Mike Evans, which historically is about a 33% proposition. Now, I will say Brady to Evans fades in their 3 years together was 70%. So just throwing that out there. The Evans fade, if you look at it through the lens of does the Evans fade work, it does. When Brady was thrown to him, they were about 70%. I don't know what the Mayfield number is. I don't know how many they threw this year. But that one was underthrown, falls incomplete. Bucs were still down 8, and then on their final drive, great play by Derek Barnes to pick off Baker Mayfield to end the game.
Yeah, and just a bad throw by Baker. I mean, it was a throw that I think was on, and he just missed it. Again, similar to the Jordan Love tipped interception thing. It was a throw that was there to be made, and he was just inaccurate with it. This was this one where there was a guy late just flashed into his way and maybe disrupted it. Either way, just a miss with the throw, and unfortunately ends the game. Yeah. The other element about the 2-point thing, though, that he described really well is it effectively changes. So you're down 2 touchdowns, you need both of them, and then if you kick the extra point first, you then get to decide one play, take it or leave it. Do you want to win the game or just take it to overtime? Right? And the overtime is not a 100% proposition; it's 92 or whatever it is. So that's your decision. Whereas if you go for 2 early, now you can still get back to overtime by getting 2 the second time, which is a better than 50-50 proposition, or you then get a choice to just win the game with your 92% kick proposition. That's a better dynamic than let's take the kick and then we still then need to get put to a choice of do you want to take a risk and win the game or not. You take the risk first, and then you still can get back to the same dynamic that you were before with a better mathematical proposition than if you were just going for it in the first place.
Yeah, and just like just like the Gibbs and drafting a running back at 12, these are like percentage point differences of good, bad, and different that you might never even feel it, right? The Lions might never even feel the Gibbs decision. Usually when you're down 8, making this decision late in the game, you're not even going to feel it either way. It's not going to matter. In this case, in the game, it didn't really matter.
But this is one of the few. So a lot of these ones we keep sort of saying, remember, the thing about it's never a yes. It's never a hard yes or a hard no. It's stealing percentage points here or there. This is one of the few where it's just always mathematically, it's always correct to go for it first. Always. Now, it doesn't mean it'll go in your favor. You might run the fade play and then have just torched it for nothing, right?
It's a couple percentage
It's execution,
points. Yeah.
But like you are always better off going for it the first time than not.
So obviously the Bucs end up they're still down 8. They didn't have a lot of time left. What was there, a minute to try to make that last last-ditch effort, 1 minute with, I think, one timeout to try to get the touchdown and the 2-point conversion, and they fell short. Lions defense back last 2 weeks. Again, I think there are some holes on the back end. If they're not getting pressure up front.
2 minutes.
The 2 minutes. Yeah, that's right. It was right at the 2-minute warning. Lions defense, I think, has some holes on the back end, but they've done a nice job overall. They cracked down in the red zone last week.
They were very aggressive in this game. They matched essentially the blitz-happy Bucs defense in blitz rate. They sent this, and they had more success in terms of dialing up those unblocked rushers. So
feels like those game plans are just magnified in the playoffs, and if something's not working, having to be able to adjust. I mean, Romo was pointing that out in the Chiefs-Bills game. It's like both quarterbacks were generally playing pretty good. Who's going to playing pretty well? Who's going to make that adjustment? Are you going to attack Mahomes? Are you going to change things up? The Lions were very aggressive in this game, putting the pressure and say, hey, go make those downfield throws. And a few times the Bucs made them. Other times they just busted the Bucs pass protection, as we talked about earlier. What else you got on this game?
That's it. Wow.
That's it.
Yeah. This was sort of almost the reverse of the Brock Purdy conversation for Baker Mayfield, right? Where he actually played pretty well over the course of the game. He executed one comeback at the end of the first half, almost executed the second one, and then ultimately threw a bad pass that cost him the game. It's like, what do you do with that as an overall analysis? Baker ends up, you sort of do, and then you do the Jordan Love retrospective of, Baker's season. Enters the year as damaged goods, a broken shell of a quarterback earning $4 million, which is like not good backup money to steer the ship for a year in this weird transition hedge that the Bucs are attempting. Gets into the playoffs, wins a playoff game, and does a really good job of almost, keeping them in a game against a better team, and then ultimately costs them the game. Overall, I think a very successful year for him. He ends up earning something like $6.8 million because of the bonuses and blah, blah, blah. Like got a bonus for winning a playoff game, got a bonus for playing time, got a bonus for something else. So ends up getting like 6.8, which is still like a freaking bargain for a starting quarterback that played pretty well for most of the year, and presumably has earned himself a decent contract now, albeit probably still not. He's probably still down net on the contract he was expected to get from the Browns, until they told him to go out there and play with a broken shoulder and then gave his job to somebody else. It was a
huge year for Mayfield. He's a free agent. Mike Evans is a free agent. They sounded like they both want to be back. Evans, they cut off talks with the Bucs, and I think he'd love to be a Buck for life. But we'll see. I mean, I wasn't expecting that coming into the season, that the Bucs were just going to look to run it back with Baker Mayfield. But I think it's far more likely now that they do the Geno Smith type of contract, and there's their quarterback. And they'll have a little bit more cap flexibility heading into next year too. So good season by the Bucs. Also, I want to shout out the Lions offensive line. Penei Sewell, another monster game for him. His block on Jahmyr Gibbs' 31-yarder, Director of Analysis Ben Stockwell pointed out, incredible reach block to help create that hole for Jahmyr Gibbs. And Frank Ragnow playing through his injury, and just he played well. Taylor Decker played well. The Lions offensive line, which has been one of the best in the league, really stepped up and did what they've done all season.
Yeah, Ragnow battling through injury.
With Jonah Jackson at left guard, he got hurt, missed most of the game. Ragnow playing through the injury. And you mentioned Kalijah Kancey. He did have a great, huge sack in this game, but he's been getting beat up in the run game. He got beat up on one of the touchdown runs there as well.
And Vita Vea had his standard, 2 to 3 plays in the game where he just ragdolls the dude in front of him, and then what happened the rest of them? Why? I don't get it. Why is Vita Vea not the best defensive lineman in the NFL? Makes no sense.
Maybe it's just an endurance thing.
Well, then maybe scale down his workload.
Play 15 plays
If that's
a game.
the problem, like if the issue is Vita Vea is 900 pounds and can't last 46 snaps, then give him 26 and have the 26 plays be all dominant run, like all dominant absolute ragdoll effects.
If I was the coach, I'd tell Vita do that every time.
Right. Like sign somebody off the street that can just play 20 snaps of nothing, and Vita Vea's 26 snaps will be the best 26 snaps in the game.
All right, man. Lions are playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Can't wait to preview that game. Dan Campbell, Kyle Shanahan, should be great. Before we get to Chiefs Bills, got to talk about AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. We drink it every day here on the PFF NFL podcast. Love that AG1. Kicking off my day with my caffeine. Gives me that energy boost, immune system support, all the good stuff. It's even better. It's better than taking vitamins. Just take my AG1. Drink it in the morning. Makes me feel unstoppable to take on the day. All great athletes have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies. And a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them also drink AG1. That's why I'm a huge fan. With every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me the key daily nutrients to support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's this micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take great care of their health every single day. So we just mix that one small scoop with water, drink it first thing every morning, and you're done. Also love that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with high-quality sourced ingredients, a win-win for all of us here on the PFF NFL podcast. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. So go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com/PFF. Go check it out right now. Kansas City Chiefs 27, Buffalo Bills 24. Chiefs move to the AFC Championship. 6th straight year they'll be in the AFC Championship. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. First time going on the road in the playoffs, and they win. Another heartbreaker for Buffalo Bills and their fans.
Yeah, great game. Great game and a disappointing ending, I think, was how this one ended up. Like, it looked for most of the game like it was setting up to be another absolute classic, and just the end of it was kind of weak, you know? But the rest of the game was phenomenal.
Yeah, every game, every play just felt so intense. I mean, Josh Allen tried an open field lateral on his first third down.
Yeah, he did.
And we know, the physics of the backwards pass. And did you say it works differently in rugby?
Yeah. So this is interesting because this is one of the reasons. It's not so much I don't think the reason, but this is one. It's a reason you can't just do it the way they do in rugby, because America has this American football, NFL has this defined the yard markers are the yard markers, and if the ball goes forward, you're screwed, right? Whereas rugby essentially understands that if two guys are running forward and one of them throws the ball backwards to the other one, the ball is probably still traveling forwards, right? For a lot of those plays.
But as long as the throw angle is backwards.
Correct. So you can have these laterals in rugby where the ball will actually travel forwards, but relative to the two people that are passing it, it's backwards. Whereas in football...
Which is a good thing, right? Like, you're gaining ground and you want to do that.
Exactly. And it means you can attempt passes like this. Whereas in football, it's like if that ball travels forwards, even if relative to the two players it went backwards, it's a forward pass. So that, I think, is slightly problematic to the idea of let's just go full rugby all the time. But I also think... if it's close, let it go. You know, like the fancy touchdown thing, right? If it's cool, let it stand. If the lateral is there, let it go. Unless it's egregious, you know? Give it like the pick play thing, right? If it's within a yard, what the hell?
Pick plays are so stupid, though. They should all be banned. Pick play.
You can't ban all pick plays.
Pick play is just the dumbest. That being legal in football is just so stupid.
You can't ban all pick plays.
Sure you can.
No, you can't.
Why is it allowed within a yard? Just because?
Because it'd be too chaotic to not allow it within a yard. This switch releases and all this kind of thing. It happens. You can't just go, all pick plays are illegal.
The Bucs, I think their first touchdown was a legal pick play within a yard. It was, I mean, they're well designed when you do it and everything. It's just it's just so stupid. And I know DBs are supposed to see it, and you want to, change.
No, that's the
depth.
worst.
You can't play press across the board because you're susceptible. You got to be ready for it.
That's the worst
idea.
But
it's like, let me set a pick like it's basketball, and then the guy's wide open. It's so stupid.
Yeah. It's a terrible idea to ban all pick plays.
Anyway, this ended up being. This was a 3-point play in the end because Josh Allen laterals.
Well, so they have the lateral.
Third and short.
The next play, they then more rugby, just different rugby. This time, Allen. It wasn't quite a push play. Allen takes the ball in the sneak and goes off like tackle or whatever, and then they get 2 latchers either side and drive them over the line. Proper, like, that's how you score in the try line of rugby, like in tight. Beautiful. Back-to-back rugby plays. Love it.
There's a lot of specific plays to talk about at high level, just to talk about the Bills really quick. They're all disappointing losses to the Chiefs. I think maybe the most disappointing one is they executed the game plan really, really well. The Bills did a lot of things well. If you drew it up, I mean, there was only the Chiefs only had 2 possessions in the first half. 2 real possessions in the first half. We talk about this on every preview show. If you can run the ball, there's this, it's not just run it. If you can literally just pick up 3, 4, 5 yards, and then, you pick up a 2nd and 3, and then, you pick up 5 on first down. And the Bills were doing this over and over again, right? Picking up 5, picking up 7 on first down, converting a 2nd and 3, taking the long time off the clock. 14 plays, 60 yards, 11 plays, 75 yards, over 6-minute drives in the first half. They had another 12-play drive at the end of the first half to score a touchdown to go up 17-13. The Bills did so many things well from a game plan perspective, but they couldn't stop the Chiefs' offense. Like, the Bills' defense felt depleted. They had no answers. And the Chiefs just felt like juggernaut that's done this before, had answers for everything the Bills had defensively, were not stopped, really. But the Bills' game plan gave them this opportunity, gave them a chance. And then at the end of the day, there were some key drops. Of course, there's a missed field goal. It ended up being, like, just from a Bills perspective, I think they did a lot of things right. And they just could not connect on a downfield pass.
Yeah.
Or you have the open touchdown at the end of the game where Josh Allen, the pressure just gets to him on the 2nd down, missed touchdown before the missed field goal. It just came down. They put themselves in position to just be one play away from winning this game, and they just couldn't do it.
Yeah, and Josh Allen, certainly for the first 3 quarters, was playing out of his mind. Like, every time they needed to play, Allen found a way to get it done. A guy drops, a touchdown just before Allen just runs it in himself later. The play he had in the 3rd quarter, the 3rd and 13 touchdown, I scoffed audibly when that happened. It's like,
I couldn't believe that.
Allen just decides to bail from the pocket, rolling to his left, jukes a guy to buy a little bit of time, and then just rifles the ball in to a receiver in the corner of the end zone. That happened. I was just like, what are you supposed to do against that? That's ridiculous.
Red zone, and that was a horrendous red zone drive, right? I mean, they just they had penalties. They had, I think they wasted a timeout on which ended up, that comes back to bite. It was a horrendous red zone drive, and Allen just rolls out and throws a ridiculous throw to Khalil Shakir in the side of, along the sideline for the touchdown. So, I mean, the Bills made a lot of mistakes, but they did a lot of good things to put themselves in position to win that game.
They did. So Allen was playing out of his mind, and then the Bills receivers became the Chiefs receivers. Like, so there was this weird stat where the Bills were up 17-13. Like, it was this sort of bizarre dynamic where Kansas City is sort of winning the game in all tangible aspects except the scoreline. And then somehow Buffalo kept ahead on the scoreline. So they were 17-13 up. And at this point, the Bills hadn't had an explosive play at all. And Kansas City had 6.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, you can't necessarily draw that up. But if you were to draw it up, that's how you would want to play the Chiefs, because you're scoring at the end of the day. You're scoring points, but you're taking up a lot of time. You're limiting possessions, and then it just puts a little bit more pressure on the Chiefs offensively, especially this year where their offense has been less effective. But they found their playoff offense, and they're back. And Mahomes has played really clean football the last 2 weeks. Isaiah Pacheco's running like crazy. But like, the Bills this was the way you would draw it up. We're going to control the football. We're going to grind it out. At the end of the day, it's like James Cook didn't feel like he averaged 3.4 yards per carry, but I think there's this tough balance between we're running the ball really well, and at some point that's going to run out. And if you start passing the ball too early, everybody's like, oh, you were running the ball well. Why'd you get away with it? I thought the Bills were just like a series or two late, turning the ball back over to Allen to just say, okay, go make more special plays. Go make some more explosives. And again, I know they had opportunities and they had those drops, which we'll talk about more.
Yeah,
But
that's the thing. So Allen dialed up several potentially explosive plays, and on none of them did the Bills receivers manage to come down with the football. They had one early that was a perfectly thrown pass. They had this other great deep pass to where Trent Sherfield seemed to make a mess of the tracking it and just didn't come in quickly enough.
Yeah.
And ends up diving, thought he caught it, and he didn't. The ball came out when he hit the ground. And then the one to Stephon Diggs, where they get exactly what they want. They get him isolated on a safety, one-on-one downfield on play action, and he just, again, makes a mess of the ball at the catch point. Like when the safety ends up falling over, and Diggs just sort of jumps in, tries to catch it, and doesn't.
That Diggs pass was insane.
That's like 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. That would have, at the minimum, I mean, they started that play. That play was from their own 20-yard line, and it would have got them to the Chiefs' 20-yard line. Like, that was
An
huge.
absolute bomb.
Yeah.
And it's Stephon Diggs, man.
It's a 60-yard pass in the air, and it's more than that because of wherever the hell he's loosing it from, like his 10. It's like a 70-yard pass in the air, and Diggs just doesn't catch it.
What a weird finish to the season for Stephon Diggs and the Bills, because there was a point when Josh Allen turned the corner in 2020. It coincided with Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
Getting him as the high volume, win at every level of the field type of receiver. And whatever's happened in the second half of the season, like, it's been good to see the Bills evolve to having more of a run game and having the running backs and the tight ends as a big part of the passing game, and having Dalton Kincaid step up and be this different type of threat. But it was to the detriment of Stephon Diggs, who at any given time could have that game where he has 8, 9, 10 catches, and just haven't seen that. And then in these big games, that drop is going to be huge, man. And then even at the end of the day, so then there's the second down pass that everybody's talking about. The Bills are at about 2 minutes. They have this chance to the balance of, we could try to score a touchdown and run out the clock. We can run out the clock and score a touchdown and never give Mahomes the ball back. Kick a field goal, give it back to him, probably get our heart broken again anyway. But second down, Josh Allen misses the throw in the end zone. Chris Jones walks Deion Dawkins back into him, probably the reason why he missed the throw. Also had Stephon Diggs open on the shallow cross.
People were hating on that throw. Here's a question. In this game, which I don't think was quite the same as it was. So, remember the last game that they met, the crazy shootout, and then whoever had the ball at the end was going to win because both offenses were cooking, both defenses were wrecked, nobody was stopping anybody, and that's why they changed the overtime rule, right? Allen never saw the ball again, and that was a travesty because Allen was going to score when he got the ball, and Mahomes was going to score when he got the ball. This wasn't the same as that. So everyone's like, what is Allen doing? He's attempting this pass. He should have just taken the thing. You don't want to give the Chiefs the ball that early. Okay, but he had a touchdown.
But to need a touchdown, I mean, there's a difference if the Chiefs needed a touchdown versus needing a field goal.
So that was an open touchdown, and he probably would have hit it if Chris Jones hadn't arrived right as he threw the ball and bumped him, and that changes, obviously, the flight of the ball. If you were given the option there, you can have a first down on a shallow underneath throw to Stephon Diggs, or you can have the touchdown.
It would have been third and short, probably.
Whatever. You can have either the first down or you can have a touchdown on that play. Which would you prefer?
I'd take the touchdown.
Right.
I'd
Even though you're
touchdown.
giving Mahomes the ball with 2 minutes left or whatever it was.
I thought, I really think that play is like a microcosm of Spags' defense. The hot spot to throw the football in the NFL is the intermediate level, the 10 to 19-yard level, just, again, oversimplifying things. But that is where, if you're effective throwing the ball in that range, or if you throw the ball often in that range, you're probably pretty effective and you're moving the ball. And Spags' defense does a great job of taking those plays away. And on that very play, you have a deep ball opportunity, which the window was opening up. But again, it's got to be longer developing, so it gives the pass rush time to get there. Chris Jones ends up getting there. That's part of you're giving that opportunity. But if the pass rush gets there, the opportunity's gone. Or you have the shallow where we're just going to rally to the ball and get it. But Spags' defense does not give those intermediate passes. And I feel like you felt that in this Bills game. When they moved the ball, they tried these low percentage deep shots, which didn't hit. They had opportunities, but they didn't hit. Or they just threw it underneath. They had a lot of screen game, a lot of underneath stuff. But the intermediate level is just not there. against this Spags defense. And I feel like that one play is just a microcosm of how they play and how tough it is to throw the ball against this Chiefs defense.
And that was all the same drive as that miss bomb to Stephon Diggs, or
that was to kick it off.
Miscatch. Like, that was the first play of that drive. I mean, at 8 minutes left.
If that hit, we might have had that same divisional round situation as a couple years ago, where they had 3 more drives each, and they would have gone back and forth.
Yeah.
But then that's what I'm saying about the Bills, and like a lot of things broke their way, as in this, they could have had an 8-minute drive to end the game.
Yeah.
And never let Mahomes have the ball. Now, if Diggs catches that pass, it could have been, like a 1-minute drive, and again, there would have been this back and forth. But game flow wise, the Bills had it set up. Their defense just could not stop the Chiefs.
Right. I don't have a problem.
That ended up being the biggest thing.
Yeah, I don't have a problem going for the touchdown on that second down play. Like, I think the touchdown was there. If he scores on that drive, okay, sure. In an ideal world, you don't want to give Mahomes the ball with 2 minutes to go. On the other hand, you did kind of need the touchdown, so I'm okay with that. Like, take it. It's there. Hit it. Like, pass up the first down. I think the points are more valuable to you at that point than the time. Like,
yeah.
In an ideal world, sure, you would like to chew up the rest of the 2 minutes and win the game with a touchdown with, 12 seconds to go. But it's not an ideal world. So the touchdown is there. Take it, and then you hope that your defense can get something done. Or, by the way, that they score fast enough that you get another shot to just get a field goal or whatever.
Right.
The next one, though, I think is more debatable. Like the third down play right after that, taking the touchdown, that's where a little bit Jordan Love-like, he's forced from the pocket and then just like takes a shot randomly into the end zone for nothing. Like, that was silly. There were passes open. I mean, he's got a guy as he's rolling out right, whoever that is, his tight end from the left, is sitting in front of him the whole way. You can pick up half of your first down and maybe get all of it if he breaks a tackle and keep the clock moving. Instead, you took a shot that was never on, and I think he was throwing it away. I don't even think that was aimed at anybody. That was bad. The one before, I think, is fine. That was not a good decision.
Man, that stuff all matters at the end. Game flow and decisions by the quarterback. That's why I do think that the fourth quarter comeback stat overall means a lot, because the quarterback dictates those. They dictate those decisions. It's in the quarterback's hands to weigh the balance of when to take the shots, when to take the easy stuff, when to take off and run, when to throw the ball away, when to live another down, right? I think all that stuff matters in the end. And those are the things, like, again, every play is magnified. At the end of the day, you're going to be like, man, all these missed opportunities or different decisions that could have been made to potentially change the outcome.
There's also this crazy sequence at the early in the fourth quarter that we didn't even get to at all.
We're going to work backwards again, like the newspaper article. You start at the end and work backwards now.
So Kansas City scores touchdown, Pacheco touchdown, early in the fourth quarter to take the lead. They're now 27-24 up. Buffalo gets the ball, their turn to answer, and they effectively go 3 and out. And then the Chiefs line up with only 10 men on the field for the punt. So, and I haven't heard whether this has been confirmed or sketched out exactly how this worked, but the Bills ran a fake punt. DeMar Hamlin gets the ball, of all people, and the Chiefs stuff it. They only get 2 yards out of it. They needed 5. Now, it was sort of suggested that that's just an automatic call. They had 10 men on the field. They had the look they wanted. They were outmanned to the side of the ball they ran. And I think it was Drew Tranquill just makes a great play, basically beating 2 guys instead of 1 and screwing up the whole play. Or maybe it was Leo Chenal, one of the linebackers. I haven't heard that confirmed, because that's a hell of a autonomy to give a punt team, like, hey, if they have 10 guys, whenever, wherever, it doesn't matter game situation, doesn't matter where we are, you've got liberty to just take the punt, take the fake,
I feel like those things are always practiced, and it's always an adjustment or a read. But then sometimes,
but it feels crazy.
Somebody needs to step in,
right?
And be like, don't.
It would be
don't
wild if the head coach doesn't have veto on that, to just be like, hey, not now. Like, ordinarily, sure, this is quite a critical situation in a playoff game with everything on the line. At our own 30, I don't really want to go for it right now. They end up going for it. They get stuffed. You can argue that it was the right procedural process play. Like, theoretically, if you look at the alignment, the fact that they're a man down, they should have picked it up. They just didn't. Anyway, so that gives the Chiefs the ball at Buffalo's 32-yard line, having just taken the lead, and now potentially we can stretch this to 10 points. We can really start to turn the screws on Buffalo and really put them in a hole. And they're right about there now at the 3-yard line. They're about to go in, and a fumble. Mecole Hardman does everybody's favorite play, fumbles through the end zone, and now whole different dynamic. And it was so close. Like, ball is knocked out by, was it Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer?
Jordan Poyer, I think. Great play, man.
Really was. And he just knocks it loose before Hardman hits the ground. Like, it's not quite one frame, which we had earlier, but it was like 3 or 4 frames. It was really close.
I started writing my notes in all caps. Bills fake punt in own territory. Then Hardman just fumbling out of bounds. Jordan Poyer, like, what's going on here? That's the other thing. I'm taking the Bills' perspective here just because I really feel for the heartbreak of the fans or whatever. Like, there were so many. That was a lucky play. At the end of it was a great play by Jordan Poyer, but like, you lucked out. Like, you got out of this disastrous situation. If the Chiefs score a touchdown, it's a 2-score game. And there were so many of these plays that the Bills would have looked back and be like, that was the turning point. Like, the Jordan Poyer forced fumble on a potential path to the Super Bowl would have been one of the most legendary plays in Bills history. The Josh Allen touchdown that you referenced on 3rd and goal from the 13. You're not supposed to score 3rd and goal from the 13. Like, those plays would have been legendary plays in Bills history, but it didn't matter because they missed Stephon Diggs, if he just held on to the ball down the field, whatever it might have been. They just left. They gave themselves opportunity with some of these plays, but then left others on the table.
And then the reason I started this whole game with saying amazing game, just an anticlimactic ending, was after those 2 plays where Allen took a shot at the touchdown, just didn't get it, and then randomly either throws the ball away or just has a bad target at nobody instead of taking a first down or a close first down play. They then attempt a field goal, miss it wide right. The Chiefs get the ball, and it's like, well, Buffalo now needs to stop, and Pacheco just runs the ball a couple of times. They can't stop him. Game over.
The first run, man. I mean,
yeah, they got like 9 on the first run. It's
unbelievable.
Like that just doesn't give you any margin for error anymore. Now you need 2 plays, 3 probably, of elite defense to have any shot, and they couldn't. So
2 runs, game was over. I mean, the Chiefs' run game has been fantastic. So the Hardman play, first off, putting the ball in Hardman's hands at the goal line. This is like an amazing history that the Chiefs have of Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman, and just bad.
But it's also a long and glorious history of those like tricksy plays working easily, and everyone going, how do they dial them all up?
That would have been another Mahomes touchdown pass. It was
exactly. That's what I mean. Like, you've got to take the good with the bad. It's just that they've gotten more bad out of it recently, but this has been working for years for them. So I think we tend to overanalyze that a little bit based off the results. Like, sure, in general terms, Mecole Hardman would be one of the players on that roster that I would have less confidence in than some others. But on the other hand, it was like those normally work. So I don't know that you can just say, well, this time it was a fumble, therefore it was a stupid play call.
But then the Chiefs' offense looks nothing like they did during the regular season. I will say Mahomes has played just clean football these last couple weeks. He did miss a couple open touchdowns early that, again, if the Bills pulled off the win, you'd look back and say, hey, Mahomes left a couple throws on the table that were open. But they had open receivers all day. Corner routes were wide open against the Bills. A.J. Klein was manned up against Travis Kelce, had no chance.
Yeah. This was the closest it's looked to the Chiefs' offense all year. Number 1, they didn't make a ton of mistakes. Number 2, Travis Kelce looked like Travis Kelce. Rashee Rice was still dangerous anytime he got the ball. Remember, he's had a problem fumbling at various times this year. There was a play he had where it was like a short pass to him. He gets like 10 yards and then hits contact, goes down. And his hand warmer flew off. And I was like, oh, the ball.
Did you see my tweet?
No.
I said I almost dove through the TV to jump on his hand warmer. I was like, there's
the ball's out.
Yeah.
No, it's just his hand warmer. We're good. But he had Marquez Valdes-Scantling had a big play in there as well. So this was the closest it's looked to the Chiefs' offense all season long. of course, you have to bear in mind that it came against this banged up, decimated Bills defense, which, we've gone this far without mentioning it, but is a big factor in this. Like, as the game wore on, particularly again, like Houston's defense did a really good job first half, just ran out of steam in the second half. I felt like the Bills defense, like they did a pretty good job the first half, and then they just could not stop Kansas City. And when you start looking at who they had on the field, it's like it's unreasonable to expect them to have stopped them in a lot of these plays. They just didn't. They just run out of personnel. Like eventually, it's such a sad reality to the NFL, but so many of these playoff games end up getting determined by just who is banged up to the point where they're no longer functional.
Yeah.
And the Bills secondary, the Bills back seven just got so banged up that it's like you can't stop what they have going right now. Like AJ Klein missed the snap, and they were saying before the game, it's the first week of practice that McDermott has ever run where he only had 4 linebackers active at all, and then Klein has to miss a snap because he's hurt. And they're like, dude, you got to get back out there because we don't have.
But is there anybody, there's nobody better than Andy Reid and, of course, Mahomes executing it than attacking those things.
Yeah.
And it was it's okay, we're laser focused on AJ Klein. And they got Travis Kelce isolated him a couple times early on.
So I don't want to make the whole analysis about that, but you have to at least bring
huge,
it up
though.
And say, the Bills were dealing with an unreasonably depleted couple of units that are pretty significant when you're talking about a game like this.
And then the other thing I wanted to say is, I said earlier in the year, the Marquez Valdez-Scantling thing. Just because he's dropped the first 20 deep balls doesn't mean he will the next few. I still think that the greatest skill a receiver can bring to an offense is getting open behind the defense. Valdez-Scantling did it twice in this game and caught both of those passes because even if you catch 70% of them, which is a terrible percentage for an NFL receiver, you're still creating some big plays. And he did in this one. So I don't think his regular season failures matter going into the playoffs. And that was the thing where the Bills didn't have answers. First play of the second half, the Bills are like, all right, we're not going to play zone anymore because we keep busting coverages and leaving wide open receivers. We're going to play man coverage. And Mahomes goes rhythm, slot fade, puts it right on Marquez Valdez-Scantling's hands for a long play, 32-yard, whatever it was, or 30-plus yard play. And it was like the Bills just didn't have any answers. And they didn't have any answers for the run game either. Isaiah Pacheco, 97 yards on 15 carries. Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes in with a 28-yard run. The Chiefs averaged over 6 yards a carry, including the kneel downs. It was close to 7 with just their running backs, if not more. It was more than 7 with their 2 running backs. So the Chiefs' offense was humming across the board. Mahomes only had to throw the ball 23 times, but they just created a ton of big plays in this one. Like you said, it looked like the old Chiefs' offense, in addition to the Bills just looking depleted. And that's why, if the Chiefs' offense doesn't play that efficiently, the Bills win this game because the Bills controlled the ball, shortened the game, only gave the Chiefs so many possessions, and they made a couple key stops late. But the Chiefs' offense being that efficient was the reason why they won. Yeah, the Chiefs' defense made a few key stops at the end, but the Bills put themselves in a great position to finally win this game, and they couldn't create those explosive plays that Kansas City could, and that was the difference.
And it's interesting now. The Chiefs are they're in the AFC Championship game again. The Mahomes has never not been in the AFC Championship game during his NFL career when he started. That's insane. Every year. That's higher than the Tom Brady Belichick baseline. Every year they're in the AFC title game.
Minimum. Doing it going on the road here.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great matchup with the Ravens. Can't wait to see it.
But it will be interesting because the first game against Miami had run out of pass rushers. None. They're signing them off the street. They're getting these aged veterans that used to have great play in them, hoping they had 20 snaps in them for this game. Buffalo had no linebackers. They're doing a similar thing. AJ Klein still being in the NFL is crazy based off his career at this point. He's their starting linebacker and the guy that's matched up with Travis Kelce all game long. The next game, the AFC title game, will be the first game that Kansas City's offense is tested against a unit that doesn't have, not just a glaring weakness, but a crippling issue at one level of the
backups
defense.
that just were not even on the team.
Right.
Or not playing at all. Just 2 weeks ago.
Massive glaring weakness at one level of the defense. That will be pretty interesting. It's also kind of interesting, both title games now are 1 seed versus 3 seed.
1 versus 3, yeah.
I can't believe we haven't mentioned Jason Kelsey, the true star of the show.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had a day.
He had a day.
Podcasters gone wild.
He was tailgating, having like bowling ball shots before the game. And then that was quite early in the game where he was shirtless, leaping out of the box into the stand. And you saw like a little clip of that. You're like, yeah, I wonder what he's doing there. And then I saw like a longer clip that was, he literally just like jumped out of the box.
Jumps into the stands.
Just grabbed a beer off somebody, chugged that, and then jumped back in. Yeah. It was like 15 seconds max of the whole thing.
No shirt the entire time.
Right, and then there's a
Cheering
bit
for his
later
brother.
on when, they go back, Taylor Swift is celebrating, and now he's just sitting behind her quietly sipping on another beer shirtless.
Great photo bomb there. And it was great. Chris Long, his former teammate, was like, "This people think this is a sign that Jason Kelsey's retiring." It's like, no, it's just Jason.
Right.
Like he was doing this.
The best thing I saw
all times.
was what's his name? Danny Helflitz, the guy from The Ringer.
Yeah.
I forget
Danny
his name.
H.
Yeah, Danny H. Good friend of the show, whose name I've forgotten. He said it to the dinosaur, the T-Rex at the end of Jurassic Park, where he's like roaring in the ruins of the building, So it's just Jason Kelsey, like with the dinosaur roar. That was very good.
It was amazing.
How many beers do you think he was in at that point?
20s.
20s.
Up to 20.
Because that was quite
Well, if he was
early
doing
in the
shots
game.
too, maybe it's closer to 10. But
They
as it ends up on my timeline again here.
right. Sheil was saying that apparently, remember when they won the Super Bowl and he was dressed up in the parade in whatever getup it was, and he gave that crazy speech.
Yes.
So he said at that point he was more than 20 beers in for that speech. Before that speech, he had more than 20 beers. And when asked to rate his drunkenness on a scale of 1 to 10, he said it was only a 5. So
He's got more in him.
minimum, I think he was 20 deep at that point, where he's shirtless jumping out of the box.
It's a well-conditioned professional athlete.
But he was coordinated enough to be able to jump back into the box from the stands. So over 20, less than 30.
I just don't know how many shots are in there.
No, I mean, let's say units. That units of alcohol thing?
Yeah.
Just treat a shot as a beer and you're good.
Oh, I got
Or
you.
a shot is a shot 2 beer, whatever it is.
He's between 20 and 30.
20 units.
Yeah. 20 to 25.
Yeah.
Impressive performance by Jason Kelsey.
Incredible.
There was one more thing I wanted to say about the Josh Allen second down. The pressure got to him.
Yeah.
And again, man, how many times has Chris Jones had like the game
Physical
clinching?
pressure.
Physical pressure.
Right.
Chris Jones putting pressure on him in the pocket.
From the tackle, by the way. It was that. Remember we said before that
He seals
Chris
the deal
Jones
against tackles.
Chris Jones dials up his most important plays. He only does it like a few times a game, but in the most critical situations, Chris Jones goes out and beats up a tackle.
Yeah.
And Deion Dawkins had a great season this year.
He did.
Like he's one of the best tackles in the NFL this season, and Chris Jones went out and bull rushed him into Josh Allen's lap on that critical play.
I'd have to see it again, but my one question there is, could he have stepped up in the pocket and created a little bit more space? Could he have felt the pressure and created a little bit more space? By the way, early in the game, do you remember Chris Jones' batted pass on the Bills' first drive?
Yeah.
That was one of the weirdest plays. It's a 3-man rush, and Jones was getting double teamed, and he just stopped playing. Like he just was standing there. And Allen threw the ball off his shoulder pads, basically. And, he jumped up to try to tip it, but he basically threw it off Jones' shoulder pads. Those were 2 plays. Allen got away with one of them, be very specific here. But the Chiefs went 3-man rush in the red zone, which I generally hate because I think if a quarterback is patient, they will find somebody open. And Allen wasn't. He threw on rhythm both times. Now, one, he was kind of patient, but he threw the ball off Jones' shoulder pads. The other one, he threw on rhythm. It was that bang-bang play to Shakir that barely converted the first. But I thought Allen could have maneuvered the pocket. That's like the time to scramble. When it's a 3-man rush, you should not throw the ball in rhythm because there's 8 men in coverage, and if you scramble around, you'll get an open receiver over time. It's one of those things I like to see from quarterbacks. That's another one of those situational awareness things, I think, that are important.
So the answer to your question is yes. If Allen takes just a step to the right, it's a perfectly clean pocket, and he has no problem.
He could have felt it, maybe.
Well, the caveat to that is I don't think it's reasonable for him to have expected, if he had even a passing understanding of the picture that was involved there, you don't expect Deion Dawkins to be coming back to you at that rate of knots. Like, Dawkins has position. He actually wins the initial contact. He's got his hands on Chris Jones' chest plate. Jones actually misses his first sort of punch at this, has to his hands slip off. He comes back underneath him. And from that point, Dawkins is in position with better leverage, like better pad level, and essentially looks like he's anchored. And then Jones just fires him back 4 or 5 yards into Allen. Like, if Allen, let's assume his eyes are downfield, he's just got the picture on his periphery. From his point of view, his left tackle's fine, and then suddenly his left tackle's ass just like careens into the side of him.
Yeah.
It's just an insane Chris Jones play.
It's really tough in hindsight looking at those plays. Sorry, something came across the timeline. I don't want to talk about it later. Okay, let's wrap it up. So 4 games. Man, we went over 2 hours. We did our thing.
Always.
We'll be back. So this week we'll start talking a little bit about the draft. We got Jim Nagy coming on the show Thursday, Senior Bowl preview. He'll be on Thursday. I think we might preview the game a different day, maybe on Wednesday. We'll preview the championship weekend. I'm looking forward to those games, though. Lions going to San Francisco, Chiefs going to Baltimore. Should be awesome. But, yeah, we'll be doing that later in the week. You're here tomorrow?
Yep, every day.
All right. We appreciate everybody. Also, there's one more thing you can do on your way out, besides voting for us for Podcast of the Year. Link in the description.
Just 17 more things we need of you.
2 more things. Go vote for us, and you can get 30% off annual subscriptions over at PFF. Promo code 30MDS. That's Mock Draft Simulator. 30MDS. Get you 30% off any annual subscription over at PFF. So go do that right now. Get your subscription. Vote for us if you want. Best American Football Podcast. Alrighty. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow with more PFF NFL Podcast.